All right, my little friends. Good to see everybody. I'm wondering if I can send an invite out. I want to do a quick tech test before Colin gets here, because we were having some sound issues yesterday. So it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us on what should always, I was going to say always should be a stimulating conversation. Always is. I have no reason to believe that it won't. So whether you're a member or not, if you want to click this link and help me test this real quick. Oh, fuck. YouTube does not support comments on private videos. Fuck you. I guess we're making it members only. I'll deal with that later. All right. Well, anybody who wants to talk, I guess now can talk. But this will go behind a paywall for about a week afterwards. But let me at least edit this to make sure we can do all the good stuff we want to do. We have not started the show yet. Don't fucking judge me yet. I need a moment. I need a moment. All right, here we go. So anybody should be able to talk. Click that link. What do you mean? It's not a private video, you fucking idiot. Oh, these idiots here. Public. Leave me alone. I swear to God, I should just stick with OBS. All right, here we go. All right, there you go. Hello, J-Rock. Good to see you, buddy. All right, can somebody click that? You don't even have to come on with the camera. I just need to hear your voice to make sure we're not getting an echo. So when Colin jumps in, we'll just be ready to start the conversation right away. That would be keen. That would be awesome. God damn it, Jaffe. Look, I just took my Ritalin, and also I'm having my protein shake. Idiot is a slur, says Dan. Fuck you, Dan. Fucking asshole. I haven't even started smoking the pot, Dan, and shit's going. I might get high. I want to talk. I don't give a fuck. Kung Fu, he's like, I'm only here for Colin. Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? Asshole? Well, then, go fuck yourself. What an asshole. Do I mind pumping the volume? Tell me what you think about that, Mutant Mo. All right, here we go. We got Joe coming in. Hey, Joe's driving his car, you old fancy schmancy. Joe, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Jaffe. Here for
Where
the test.
are you? Where are you? Where do you?
I'm on my
driving?
break. I gotta get a smoothie on my break. I only have 10 minutes.
Yeah, but what world do you live in? What part of the country?
Oh, Boca Raton, Florida.
Look at you, bitch, with the convertible in Florida. How many women do you get? You get lots of women, right? Or men if you're into that.
I have one girlfriend.
Yeah, but you could have more. I hate people like you son of a bitch. You got a convertible. You live in a sunny place. You're good looking. You're in shape. Fuck you.
I only have it down because my AC broke.
Yeah, big deal. Big deal. I'm jealous.
My AC broke, so you gotta put the roof down.
Joe is Jaffe if he was cool, says Mike. You goddamn right. That's a cool dude. I will never be that. I am 53. I've made peace with it for the most part that I will never be cool like that. And I have to sort of buttress up my other things, my personality, my charisma, my earning potential, because I just don't, what is that like? Was your dad good looking? Was your mom good looking?
They're short Jewish people, we look.
I'm a short Jewish person. I would never create something like you. There's the laws of the universe demand not that. Let me ask you this: if you were a woman,
very flattering.
if you were a woman, and I talk to you this way, people would say that's offensive. Is that a problem?
I'm very flattered.
Yeah, I know, because we're guys and we can talk like this and we know it's just kind of shooting the shit. But I would imagine if it was a woman, it would be more problematic because, they get a lot of shit in this society. What do you think? Fuck you, Darth Nugget. I'm not insulting my kids. My kids are beautiful. I'm just saying they don't look like waspy motherfuckers like Joe.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. You don't look too bad. I saw old interviews of you back at E3 when God of War 2 came out and God of War 1. You were winning the awards, doing the press junket. You weren't looking too bad.
Dude, I don't have a problem with the way I look. I'm not. Milkmaster says your arms are as big as my head. Fuck you, Milkmaster. I will murder you in your sleep tonight. The point is, I don't have a problem with the way I look. I'm just very aware that there are people out there that look better, and I'm always just tremendously jealous. Anyway, buddy, drive safe out there. Enjoy your smoothie. Thank you for help. Nobody's complaining about your audio, so it should work. So, all right. See you, Joe. Actually, wait. Colin Moriarty, you were on with Joe. Look at Joe. Fuck that guy. Let me tell you something, Colin.
Yeah,
he's good looking. Yeah. He's in Boca Raton, Florida. He's driving a convertible. He's got women on the side and his wife. Don't you hate people who look like Joe?
Yeah. Fuck you, Joe.
Fuck you, Joe. Go crash your car. Colin and I hope you crash your fucking car right now.
I don't hope.
We don't want you to die, but we want you to get the best thing that can happen to you is an industrial accident, as Jim Belushi says in About Last Night. All right, Joe, drive safe, buddy. We'll see you later.
Have a good show, guys.
All right, man.
Bye.
Every time we start a show from now on, Colin, we're gonna have Joe call in from his convertible.
Cool. That sounds wonderful.
I think so. How you doing, man?
Good. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. Hang on, I'm going to drink my protein because I'm on, Ozempic. So
yeah.
The only protein I get.
How's it going? You feeling good? Looking good? You look good.
Thank you. I lost 20 pounds, but
great.
I've been stuck at that for a while, and you can plateau. So they got to kick up my, amount. I'm on like 1 milligram or something. So. But it's good. It's good so far. Listen, I have a question before we get started.
Sure.
How are you feeling today? Do we want it to be serious and, subdued, or is it kind of chill? What's your vibe? Because I don't want to push people into something.
No, I'm down for really whatever. I got up. I had a brief meeting with my accountant. I went to the doctor for a physical. And? So I'm feeling healthy right now.
What did they say, though? Good? Oh, no issues?
Yeah, no, things are good. I just wanted to get a physical and get blood taken just to kind of check things, try to be proactive.
Did I hear you had skin cancer at some point?
Yeah, when I was in, right when I had left college, I had skin cancer on my nose.
It was just nothing. I mean, it was
whatever, basal cell carcinoma or whatever they call it. I actually had it there it was just a small bump. And I was like, oh, I guess it's just like a skin thing or whatever. And I just left it alone. And then that's what it ended up being. So I probably should have gotten it taken off a lot sooner. But
no,
that was a long time ago.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. Listen, what kind of shampoo do you use? There's a reason I'm asking.
Head and Shoulders. I love Head and Shoulders. Love it.
The reason I ask is my kid went to the grocery store yesterday. I said, hey, pick me up some shampoo. She says, okay. Yeah. And she brings me back this Fructis Pure Clean.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's very girly. It smells like sour apple perfume. But now when I think about it, do you want your shampoo to smell manly? Or do you want it to smell like a girl? I kind of like the fact that now my hair smells like a girl. Not that I want to smell like a girl, but I want to have the smell around me.
Right. Yeah, there's like the difference between like the muskiness and the more floral and fruity kind of. Yeah, I always say this to Micah is like I don't wear cologne or anything like that, and I just want to be neutral. Like I like the smells of the laundry detergent, I like the smell of the soap and all of that, but in presentation, I just don't want you to discern me in any way. I don't want to walk into a room and smell bad, obviously, but I also don't want to walk into a room and be like, oh, it's Colin's fucking cologne.
When you were at IGN and you were interviewing developers and stuff, did you ever go into a place that was just smelled terrible? And
all the time.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, because you're always in these conventions and like you're in these, you remember like the old PlayStation booths at E3 or whatever.
I mean, like a developer. I mean, like you went to do an interview with a developer.
Oh, with a developer.
Like, oh my God, who smells like shit? Ken Levine, right? I mean, was any of that happening?
I see what you're saying. Yeah. No, I don't think I ever really experienced that, but definitely the players of games.
Sure.
Because this is the thing that always confuses me. I'm personally a big fan of showers. Like I would live in the shower if I could. I love them. I actually love baths as well.
Yeah, me too.
And I look forward to my showers every day. Like I just can't imagine people that just don't shower, don't bathe, don't take care of themselves. That's just strange to me from a comfort standpoint, because I'm like, oh, this is like a highlight of my day is sitting in this scalding hot shower, regardless of it cleaning my body. It's good for me.
Because it gives you the same kind of relaxation. Is that why?
Yeah, I like the relaxation.
I love it.
I like my regimens as well. I work out, take a shower, smoke a joint, eat dinner.
Yeah, I still haven't done the joint before dinner.
Oh, you got to do it.
Alexa, remind me at 8 p.m. tonight to smoke a joint before I eat. God damn her.
Speaking
Alexa,
of which,
remind me at 7 p.m. tonight to smoke a joint before I eat. Okay. Ooh, there you go. Yeah. There you go. What do you think about the? We're going to get to games, fellas, watching the chat. I know, but I like to talk. Colin's an interesting human being outside of games. This is what you don't understand. Games are wonderful. Games are better right now than they've ever goddamn been. But I will
I agree.
tell you that there's a world outside of games that is worth talking about as well.
Mhm.
What I was going to ask you is, who do you think, though, is probably the smelliest game developer? Oh, no. Smelliest game executive. Bobby Kotick probably smells pretty bad, don't you think?
Maybe sweatiest game executive. That's so
Not
interesting.
Smelliest.
Smelliest. Yeah, I'm sorry. Bobby Kotick is an interesting answer.
Because
he's also interested apparently in TikTok. Did you see that? That he's like kind of trying to get.
Would not surprise me.
Yeah.
It would not surprise me. Can you imagine? Good God. But, maybe it's better than China. Maybe they're the same fucking thing, given how much he's given into China over the years. Do you... Because they said Trump smells really bad, and Kotick and Trump kind of remind me of each other.
Do they say that about Trump? I never heard that.
Oh, yeah. There was a whole story that... here, I'll show it to you real quick.
That's so interesting. Well,
I mean,
unfortunate for him.
Maybe all the presidents smell bad. I don't fucking know. Trump smells bad. Does Donald Trump smell? Where'd it go? Why do people say Donald Trump stinks of terrible soiled diapers, Axe body spray, and hot dog burps? That's what people... Oh, yeah, that's a CNN commentator rips Donald Trump over his odor.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I mean,
that would be like my biggest fear is smelling.
Yeah, I'm the same. I am the absolute same. I'm just like, dude, take care of yourself, you fucking idiot. Anyway, all right. Yeah. Darth Nugget says Gabe Newell smells like spray tan. He might.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We're going to talk video games. All right, here we go. First off, let's talk. I mean, I got a whole list of stuff as always, and thank you for being here. And thank you.
It's good to be here. It's good to talk to you.
Always nice. Yeah, of course, man. There's a lot to go over, but let's first talk about this. Let's talk about the Sony CEO situation. Were you surprised? What do you think? What kind of changes are going to be coming, or is it? I mean, what do you think on this whole thing?
Yeah, it is a little bit of a surprise to divide and conquer like this, but I think it's an indication of how big the brand has become in some sense, and it's somewhat unwieldy. You don't need. I was actually thinking about this in the car on the way to the doctor, and I was like, I was thinking about a company like Disney that has one person at the top. But even then, their company is somewhat linear because it's entertainment. It's movies, it's TV shows, it's whatever, comics. And
parks, yeah.
So like you can kind of like maybe imbibe all of that as one person. I do think Sony obviously is a multi-tendril company, but PlayStation itself is now very much hardware and software. And you might want to, and services. So you might want to consider dividing those up amongst people that know better. I was thinking this, though, that there's no way that people can complain anymore that Sony isn't being led by a creative or PlayStation isn't being led by a creative. You're getting that. And we'll see how it all works out. I wasn't anti-Jim Ryan really at all. In fact, I think he did a really great job in a lot of different ways. But so I think in thinking about it overnight, because I saw it late last night, and I was like, yeah, maybe splitting this into two, like the old Roman Empire or something.
Well,
it's
Sony
like a good idea,
Pictures has experience with it, right? Sony Pictures had Amy Pascal, and I think his name was like Michael Rubin or Mark Canton or one of those guys. He did the business, and she did the creative.
Right.
And she's kind of fallen out of form after the leaks from North Korea and stuff, but she's still in the biz. But they ran probably a decade of Sony Pictures where it was just Oscar nominees and talent wanted to work with them, and it was a really great synergy those two brought to it. So maybe it'll be like that. I mean, I'll tell you something. When you talk about creativity and Herman, I mean, I hate the Horizon series. I think it's rubbish. I think the controls are brilliant. I think the graphics are brilliant. But I think the game, the IP is terrible. But I mean, he's tripled down on that thing. I mean, do you think it really is as special as he seems to think it is?
No. Well, my wife and I were just talking about that the other day when the rumor came out that there might be a Horizon Lego game in the works.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jesus Christ, because you have Horizon 1 and Horizon 2, which I think are both, in my opinion, awesome. Especially the second one. I mean, maybe the most beautiful console game ever.
Oh, visually, yes. 100%. Yeah.
And so there's going to be a third one, obviously, that ends in a cliffhanger. So they'll wrap that up in a trilogy. But then you have this rumor of a Horizon Zero Dawn remake. You have the rumor, which is pretty much confirmed, of an MMO being developed at NCSoft. You have the multiplayer game being developed at Guerrilla. You have you had the VR game last year. It's not that good, no. Right. But I would argue that nothing is that good. Like, I just hope that and plus the TV show. So I hope that they just know when to leave good enough alone. I personally think Horizon's really special in a lot of different ways, in my opinion, but I don't think anything should be. Horizon is not the franchise I would be doing this to if I were Sony. I mean, if I were really going to double, frankly, if I were going to double and triple down on anything, it would be God of War. And I actually don't really even like the new God of War games as much as other people do, but I think that that's much more marketable. And and there's more ways to kind of mess with it because it's not so much only about Aloy in the case of Horizon, but about Kratos and Atreus and wherever else they go and the different pantheons and all that. So I'm a little surprised they're exploiting it the way they are, but we have to wait to see it play out. But it could be a potentially 8 Horizon games. Including the
maybe
two
if they
original
kill Aloy in the first next game, and then because I think I'm just so turned off by that character. I just find her obnoxious as fuck. So we will see. But so here's the question though. So I mean, we first decided to talk last week when all this shit was going down with Xbox, and we'll talk about that, of course. But you know, it's interesting. It's like whoever you put in this role at this point of PlayStation or Xbox, right? I mean, isn't this just delaying the inevitable? I mean, there is no other route other than the collapse of the lack of, you know, this is not sustainable if they continue to, you know, more of the same, right? I think that's become evident, not just when Sean said it and you can do the math and realize Sean was right, but when you actually start seeing it play out, do you think someone like Herman Hulst is put in the position to just sort of, you know, steer the ship in a profitable way until it, you know, goes off the waterfall on the edge of the earth? Or do you think he really is in there to go, I have to figure out how to make this brand work for another 20 years? Because it ain't going to work the way it's working now, right? I mean, do you agree, or is that a wrong theory?
No, I agree generally that something needs to give. I personally think that budgets have basically maxed out, or I would say Spider-Man 3's budget, purported to be in the 300 millions, is a maxed out AAA budget, unless you're dealing with Grand Theft Auto or something like, right, exactly. And so I think what they need to do is learn to rein that in. I don't know if you saw Andrew Wilson. He gave a speech last week where he was talking about generative AI getting FIFA stadium builds from 6 months to 6 weeks to 6 days or whatever using AI. And unfortunately, I think if they want to continue down this road of very high polished AAA games, which they should, because that's their pocket, then they're going to need to figure out a way to do it more judiciously. So I agree with you that it's unsustainable, but I think what you see from this split up, this Roman Empire split between the two CEOs, is that it sounds like Herman's going to be very heavily pursuing IP expansion. And I do think that that is a way to make much more money on. So like you put out a game for $300 million, and instead of looking at it and saying like the return we get is the money made on the game plus PS Plus subscriptions, whatever the case might be, you look at that, and when you deploy IPX, you say we're going to release a game, but we're also going to have a movie complement or a TV show complement or something else that's going to, and we're going to count that as part of the holistic view of how we've moved forward with Horizon, God of War, Uncharted. I think that's somewhat wise because I think you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. I think the bigger thing in some sense is embracing the PC platform. And this is something that I've been really bullish about. And a lot of my audience doesn't agree with me, but
pro or con bullish?
Pro, where I'm like, Helldivers is a great example, but it doesn't have to stop there. Helldivers is a great example of lightning in the bottle, of course, but also day and date releases with a lot of zeitgeist energy.
Right.
I want to see what a AAA single player game can do on PC, and to be perfectly honest with you in that regard, because you can kind of just leverage them for what you would call quote unquote free money. I mean, if you care most about the PlayStation brand, I don't think you're really going to get a lot of these people. I mean, I think you've had a chance to get PC gamers, so just go exploit that market, take the money, and make PlayStation more sustainable. So I think that that's what they're trying to do, and that in fact could be why they're splitting up too, because he's going to be so mega focused on simply the content. And there's this a whole nother dynamic. We're going to get another console after this. I think the next console might be the last one. We've been saying that for like 20 years though. So
why?
Yeah. So
what's the reason? What's the reason this next one is going to be the final one? Probably.
I just think there is an inevitable convergence of technology where like we thought it was going to be and where it will actually be in the real world. I just don't know how much more you can kick that can down the road before it becomes obvious and inevitable.
Whether it's streaming or everybody just has a PC or a tablet.
Right, yeah, like I see there are some people like our tech advisor Moore's Law is Dead that we do shows with sometimes, who's like totally like it's never going to work the way you think it's going to work because of the sheer physics of sending signals around. But I'm like, if you can get at least in urban areas and big first world countries that drive a lot of PlayStation's profit, a lot of data centers and places where you can leverage these things, I don't see why PlayStation wouldn't necessarily even be an app on a smart TV, you know? And
oh yeah, I agree.
And I've so I just think that has to happen. You know,
I've heard that complaint a lot, and it never really pans out though, because I mean at that point you're arguing, Okay, well then you shouldn't be, you know, I mean, you're talking about, you know, maybe Chat GPT can recognize, or Daryl from the 80s movie where he was a robot can recognize that level of, you know, fragment of a second in latency. But at that point, okay, then don't play with a controller that's not plugged in, and sit closer to the TV. So, I mean, you know, I'm playing games and I don't even notice a difference when I'm plugged into the wall with GeForce Now. Like, I don't even think about it being streaming. So I don't know if that physics thing is enough to really hamper it. But so okay, so let me ask you this though, sort of on the flip side, because I was thinking about this. I was talking about this with the chat yesterday. You know, the thing Sean said, which, if people don't know, he's like, look, we're not growing the console gaming audience. That's the, you know, the pie gets split up, but it usually lives around 250 to 300. Little spike here and there when something like the Wii comes along, or, you know, but that's it. Do you think there's a reality where video games that are more kind of like that we're into, not just because of the mechanics, but thematically or whatever, could somehow either have a mode or a version that really reaches out to other people, you know, who would be into the subject matter? Because it's not like the Marvel movies or Game of Thrones or all the geeky stuff doesn't connect. It's that the games are so long and the games are so intimidating to a lot of people. Do you think there is a valuable exploration there to say, how can we somehow make the experience more mainstream? Or do you think it's like, that's never going to happen and you should just focus on let those people have their Candy Crush? Or do you think there's a connection there?
There probably is a connection. I don't know how fruitful it is, though, for the console players to really be exploring that lane, because it's not. PlayStation has to therefore go where they are, right? They're not going to. Those people are not going to come to them, and so there's going to already be. This is where I think the Apples and the Googles and others that control interfaces on phones and whatever else, Microsoft certainly with Windows. I think that's more where they would want to play. Like, my personal opinion, and I think we've talked about this in the past, is, and I tweeted about this today in a video clip, which was, I just think that people, and I think executives need to see it more like this, is that they're not focusing in on time as currency. You have to like almost develop games, and you have to have a whole pipeline of games where you're like, how are we going to justify?
You tweeted that there's too many games, and that's
I would think that there are orders of magnitude too many games. And you and I have discussed in the past, I don't think it needs to go back to like the NES 800 game catalog, but I'm saying, what if instead of 15,000 games on Steam a year, there are 3,000 or something like that? And just like get rid of a lot of the volume, I think would go a long way. But I think people with companies with pipelines, so like PlayStation has a pipeline going out probably 5 or 6 years at this point, probably to the next console. They probably have PlayStation 6 games in development.
Yeah.
And I would assume that they would want to look at it and say, like, well, we have a picture and we're going to manage our platform, but how do we manage it from time? Like, I look at Rise of the Ronin, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Stellar Blade, all coming out within a month of each other. That's not really good catalog management, you know? No. Because a lot of the similar people are going to be playing these games. They have the money's not the problem. It's the time. Yes. Games are cheaper than they've ever been. People just don't have time for this. So why are you releasing 3 games competing with each other? And no one's happy with the way any of these games do, I guess. Stellar Blade I haven't heard much about, but it's like, you know, oh, Square's unhappy with everything. It's like, well, maybe try releasing your game not on top of 3 other games. To me, it's just, this is where I get into, competitors can release games on top of each other. They want to eat each other's pieces of the pie or whatever. But I don't think that Sony and some of these other companies are thinking too holistically yet about time as currency.
How is that possible? I mean, what you're saying is logical, but it's not revelatory. I mean, how did these people not sit there and go, like, I mean, the first time I remember it with Sony was when they released Sly and Ratchet, and there was one other one all in the same fucking Christmas season. And it's like, what are you people doing? But why I mean, how have they not come to that conclusion? Or maybe they're like, yeah, Jaffe, we know, but financially, if we didn't get them out in this quarter and they weren't ready until they were ready, we would have lost money. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of, is that they were. That's
what I think too, is just they look at specific quarters and reaching certain goals. this is the nature of a publicly traded company. They're like, well, we need this asset to reach this goal, and we needed this asset now to reach that goal, even if we're undercutting it for the next quarter or whatever.
Right.
It's short-sighted. I brought up many times that I just remember it so clearly because I thought it was interesting because I was so much younger in my career. At IGN, we got Killzone 2, I think it was, like 6 months early. The game was done. They were holding it to release it at a certain time. And that seemed to me to be logical if you have a first-party studio like Guerrilla. It's like, just go work on the next game. I mean, what is the big deal? We'll get the money, you know? Right.
And you'll also make a better long-term play. You'll make a franchise, I mean, not in the case of Killzone necessarily, but you'll make a franchise that people are, are happy with, and they'll buy the next one and the next one and the next one. I mean, they did that with Siphon Filter too. There was a Siphon Filter that they held. I don't know which one it was. It may have been 2 or 3, and they were just like, it's done, but we have to, it's not a good time.
Right. Timing is totally important. Sometimes that's bullshit, and people really need more time, and they're making it seem like they're really nurturing the game and all of the rest. But I just think, generally speaking, Sony should have a big first-party game probably 3 times a year, and maybe a big second-party game 2 to 3 times a year. And even their second-party relationships are starting to change. I haven't seen anyone talk about this, but they don't own Stellar Blade. This was a big thing to me when I turned on the game and started playing it, and it's awesome, by the way. Mm-hmm. And I noticed, because we play so many games, I'm like, it says copyright Shift Up, published by Sony Computer Entertainment. And then I went and looked it up, and I'm like, Sony doesn't own Stellar Blade. They published the first game. They probably had the publishing rights, very similar to Sunset Overdrive, Insomniac, and Xbox back in the day. But I'm like, even the way they're doing these things, Sony would never work with anyone without owning the IP back in the day. They lost the opportunity to publish a bunch of games, including Limbo, which was just released. That was pitched to PlayStation first. And they wanted to own everything that they published. So they're changing. And I just think that they should focus less on volume and more on the quality of the content and the pocket in which the content fits. And everything else is kind of a waste of time, in my opinion. That's why when people are like, oh, where are the games? It's like, what do you want, dude? Like, there are so many fucking games.
Well, I think they say, where are the games? I think they mean, where are the console brand defining games? It's not that people lack games to play, but I think, there was a time when you could totally feed yourself on exclusives all year long. And those days are long gone, of course, in terms of consoles. But I think that's what people mean, unless they just totally stick to only AAAs. I don't know. But yeah, you're right about the changing relationship, because even Square is now like, yeah, we're moving on over to the PC, and I assume I guess you could go to the Xbox if you want, but maybe they mean Game Pass. I don't fucking know. But
I think it's great for Square. I mean, that's the other thing is, like, I always thought it was weird that Square was doing these exclusives to begin with. I'm most excited because actually it's Nintendo that has the most Square exclusives, and by liberating those, I'd be pretty excited. But if people on other platforms play Final Fantasy 16 or Final Fantasy 7 Remake, I think that's great. They're fucking awesome.
What do they have? What, Octopath is not on PS yet, right? The
Octopath 1 isn't. Octopath Traveler 2 is. Octopath Traveler 1 was an Xbox and Switch game. See, that's why. And obviously, games like Front Mission Remake and everything were timed exclusive.
Strategy is not on anything but Switch, right?
Right, exactly. So that's why I always think it's interesting when people, because Square said it again recently, like, where these games aren't reaching their potential. I'm like, are you guys ever happy with anything? Like, I don't understand. Every fucking quarter, every fiscal year, you hate the way everything did. It's like, why are you doing this to your own games? It's very, very weird. But they're dumb too. They released fucking games like Babylon's Fall, which was DOA, Foam Stars, DOA. It's like, why even bother? And I think they're finally getting the what we want out of Square Enix, classic games, right? Maybe some HD, remakes or whatever, like they're doing with Dragon Quest 3, but make AAA games. Dragon Quest 12, Final Fantasy 17, Kingdom Hearts 4, whatever else you want to do. You do something random, like bring back Parasite Eve or something like that. That would be cool. But
which they don't own the rights to either, but that would be
That's
great.
right. Doesn't a Fuji or something own the rights?
I had no idea. I was stunned to learn a year ago that they didn't own the rights. I'm like,
yeah, there's like some TV or movie studio. I learned that too recently.
Yeah.
Because they released Third Birthday on PSP, and that was cool, but so I'm just using that as an example. Like, do that, and that's what Sony's going to do. Sony has no business investing in anything that's not AAA anymore, in my opinion, which is why I think that they are. Dude, the leak, the most recent leak out of the Insomniac leak, where you saw all the sales numbers, I emailed you about some of them. I'm like, damn, dude. I mean, if anything, this is an example of why they're not even bothering. Like, why would they make a pixel junk game? It's like,
Yeah, sure, but then it goes back to the question of everybody's just going to go to PC then, because ultimately, if the only reason to buy a box is our 3 games a year, that'll eventually maybe even day and date come to PC, then it's almost like, you know, how much money are they going to lose from people walking away from console and their licensing fee for everything that gets sold on that box?
Yeah, I just don't you think? What do you think about that though? Don't you think? I personally think the whole PC eating your lunch thing is way overplayed. Like gaming PCs are not cheap, they're not accessible, they're not easy to use. A lot of normal people don't use them, and I think consoles are just going to always be more attractive. That's why the Series S exists. You know,
Alexa, stop. It's the fucking, what was it they called it? Pornhub or something? Anyway,
right? Oh yeah, the chat girl thing or
chat. Yeah. You know, I think the narrative about PCs being difficult to game on is I think that's the narrative that's overblown. It's just not an accurate thing. And I mean, you've been on my show enough to know how technically stupid I am when it comes to things like sound and saving files and all that shit. I am not one of these. I want to tinker with shit. I don't give a fuck about that. I just want to play. But it is pretty easy, and they don't have to be that expensive. I was stunned the other night. I told the chat this yesterday, but I went over to my ex-wife's house, and my kid was playing Fortnite on his MacBook via GeForce streaming, and it was great. I'm just like, there's no fuss. You click a button, he's playing Fortnite, and he doesn't even have to, you know, download the fucking thing. But anyway, regardless, I'm interested in your idea of time, though, because it seems like there's 2 ways to solve that. One is you make less stuff, so the amount of time a game takes sustains, or you say these games are too long anyway. Not like evergreen games. I don't mean something like a Hearthstone or even a Helldivers that is, you know, the multiplayer stuff tends to have legs. Mario Kart 8, and that makes sense, and nobody's complaining about that. But if you're talking about like narrative-based games, most of them are probably too long for their own good anyway, in my opinion. Not all of them, not all RPGs and stuff, but I just wonder if that, you know, between that issue, the issue of so many games, and the issue of some games that are perpetually sticky. I mean, I'm still playing Modern Warfare 3, when I played the shit out of Modern Warfare 2. I'm playing the shit out of Marvel Snap. I mean, there's almost like 3 ways to solve the time problem, but the people who are winning the war with the time problem, they're like, I don't want to solve it. I like that people are still playing Marvel Snap. I like that people are still playing Modern Warfare 3 because we make a lot of money. I mean, so if there's not a concerted effort on the part of the, like, you know, the heads of the gaming publishers get together, like the mafia, then it becomes a question of, I guess somebody has to make something that proves the point that shorter games are more desirable and more lucrative, or enough game companies have to go out of business that we just have less games. But it is ridiculous, the fact that, I'm playing Akira now. No, not Akira. What's Indica now? And then I just started playing this Crypt Master, which somebody told me you were playing as well. The typing thing. Have you seen this?
Oh no, I haven't seen that. I love typing games. I want to make a typing game.
Crypt Master just came out. It is batshit awesome. But anyway, I mean, it's just like, it never fucking stops, and I'm having to get okay with the fact that I just drop shit. It's like, yeah, I know you want to finish that, kind of, sort of, but no, this is new. I'm going to play this. Has your completion time dropped or not really?
No, I mean, I really like to finish the games that I play, unless I'm really turned off by it, or it's just not that kind of game. Like I was playing that game Skur Ritual for like probably 20 hours or whatever. That game's fucking dope. I can't believe it has like a 50 on Metacritic. I'm like, well, I have no idea where that came from, but okay, I thought it was great. But that's not a game you really beat. So, but I beat Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and the game is way too long. I mean, my audience was really mad at me for saying, I'm like, the game is too long. It's too long. 90 hours, dude.
Yeah.
That's
why
I'm
not
so
completing everything, or that is?
No, I tried to do as much as I could, but I didn't do everything. Like I didn't do all the Chadley stuff, but I got like every yellow dot and all of that kind of stuff. And I know people say, this was a big argument on my podcast on Sacred, which was, I just don't know how you make the value judgment on content without experiencing it. Like, how do you know if it's valuable or not without having played it? Like people are like, just do the golden path and ignore it. I'm like, but how do I know? How do I know that I'm supposed to do that? Like, or that's worth it? I'm glad I didn't, because there's so much story shit on the side that you would never get That's why I don't know if you've been playing it or have played it, but Stellar Blade is so good.
I played the demo and I liked it, but I didn't love it, and I just have too much other stuff to play. And people tell me that it gets good at the end, but the first act or the first half is not great.
Oh, I think it's awesome. Like it reminds me of that late PS2, early PS3 games era. Now, I don't necessarily want to go back to that era. I do like games with more depth, more heft, and more to say. But this game is like I'm playing and I'm like, I'm not really even entirely sure what's going on. I don't know what you're talking about. I just really love the combat and the characters and the traversal and all the rest. It's just really, really good. It's very refreshing. And knowing that, I'm looking at the golden path tracker on PSN when I turn it off, and it's like I'm blazing through this thing, and it feels like I'm not only using my time wisely, but getting a lot of value for it. In fact, I think the trap for a lot of people is just hours played equals value, which I think is just such a huge mistake, and is such a reductive way, and it's such a commoditization of video games in such a strange way. So I hope that what people realize, in my opinion, AAA gaming, unless it's like, it really justifies like a Fallout game, 100-hour exploration. Right. It's open world. 20, 30, 40 hours is pretty perfect.
The problem is you have money and I have money, right? And so it doesn't affect us when we get a new game. I buy games on Steam or PSN like I'm buying bubble gum at the pharmacy for like 20 cents a piece of gum. It used to be 5 cents. I'm an old fucker. But I get that some people are like, look, I only buy 3 games a year, 4 games a year, and I want that, so it's almost like there's 2 different demands. There's us demanding it for the art form and for the overall experience. And then there's this whole other audience that's like, shut the fuck up, you guys. I want to buy 1 game. And if that lasts me, for 6 months, that's the best fucking thing going on.
I think you're right, Jaffe, but have you considered that, like, in my opinion, this kind of is a rubber hits the road thing where it's like that is interesting in a vacuum, but then you look at the completion stats and you're like, nonetheless, you might think that you're getting value, but you're not finishing the game. No one's finishing these games, right?
Yeah, but I agree. And I used to say that too, but it might've been somebody at Ubisoft talking about it, or somebody was talking about the length of the Ubisoft games and the low completion rate. And some executive said, yeah, all that's true, but the people who quit the game 30% in, if they've played for 5 months and they've only gotten 30% and they've dropped off because they're good, they're full, it's kind of like criticizing somebody from going to McDonald's. It's like, you didn't eat the whole thing. It's like, yeah, but it doesn't mean I didn't like what I ate. I'm ready to move on to something else.
That's a very interesting point.
And so I'm like, okay, because I always looked as a creator, I always looked at the low completion rate, like, what the fuck? That's terrible. It's like, well, kind of, and it's interesting too, because I don't know if you look at, I'm sure you guys do, but I look at my stats for this show all the time. And I'm always just like, the completion rate, the percentage of people, the average consumption of a show. And at first, and it's still pretty good. I'm pretty proud of it. But at first you look at it and go, it's never, on podcast, it's longer. But on YouTube, it's obviously shorter. So on a YouTube 2-hour video, you might I get real excited when I get 30 minutes for a 2-hour video, right? But that still means that there is a percentage of people who liked it enough to watch the whole fucking thing, and it kind of seems like it's like video games, right? It's like, people watch until they're full and maybe they come back, maybe they don't, but, it makes me, we were talking about this yesterday, PS6. Okay. Here I'm going to pitch you 2 things for PS6 and I want you to tell me what you think. The first one is, like in Spider-Man 2 and like in Death, what was called Rollerdrome. Every game, there's an API that sits on top of the system, unless it's kind of like, certain games, multiplayer games, blah, blah. But every kind of, most games would be forced to use an API that allows the game, the hardware to say, slow the game down up to like 25%. So I can play Stellar Blade at 42%. You can play it at 100%. But it'll make games more playable for a wider audience. What do you think if Sony said that's going to be a part of the sort of CRTs, the demands for PS6?
That's actually an interesting idea, just because I couldn't intellectually defend why I would be against that, other than the purity of the game, right? Like it's some like whatever that might mean to someone, like when people talk about Soulsborne games getting difficulty levels and stuff. But to me, it is kind of incumbent on them to meet people where they are, how they want to play. So having a real dynamic game, like the next Horizon game, but it's like a completely dynamic experience, would be amazing. And we've frankly seen that. If you go into the options menus, I always do, and just kind of poke around, they're becoming compounded over and over and over again with more and more and more things that you can mess around with, and it's really awesome. So I don't see why they wouldn't want to do that, and then makes fewer products that reach more people in different ways. I think it's actually like kind of maybe the splitting the atom of the entire situation. Like if you figure that out, you would have huge money makers on your hand. You wouldn't have to worry about
That was the
anything.
second thing, right? So let's say you take Spider-Man 3 and you say, okay, we're going to split off a skeleton crew of every game we make. And we're going to say there's 20 people on the skeleton crew, and they're not really creating that many new assets. It's all about basically making an abridged version of the core game. So whether we stream that or whether that's cheaper or whether it just comes with the main game, but it's basically a 4-hour version of all of these games that are usually 20, 30, 90 hours. So I can quote finish Final Fantasy Rebirth, but I'm not going to finish it the way you did. I'm still going to get the story. I'm going to get the experience, but it's going to be a human designed, crafted experience to say, not everybody wants to sit through 90 hours. And Sony kind of as a publisher said, we're going to start pushing our developers to do that and supporting that. Do you think that would be a problem, or do you think that would be a good thing at a business level?
At a business level, it would be a good thing. I do wonder if it undercuts the entire medium in some like fundamental sense, though, about...
I mean, it does that anyway. The business model always undercuts the medium. It's like, oh, it's a $70 product. You got to put fat on it. It's got to have more hours. So you're
I guess what it would be akin to, in my opinion, Jaffe, would be like something like Cliff's Notes for books. That's actually totally valid for a lot of people. That I used to do that in college sometimes. I'm like, I'm not reading this fucking book, right? But I didn't really experience it. If that doesn't
like
matter,
Cliff's Notes for book, it wouldn't be like that though, because the guy who wrote Oliver Twist Cliff Notes was not Charles Dickens, right? It would be the person going, look, I want to make this compelling. I want to make it good. And if you're here for the story and kind of the gist of it, like I look at God of War Ragnarok, I probably would have really liked that game if it wouldn't have been so fucking slowly paced, right? And it's just like give me a montage of the greatest hits and slow it down where it needs to be slowed down, and let me know what this is. And then after that, maybe I'll go back and play more of it. I don't know. I don't
hate it. Like a series of sliders that would indicate. It would be interesting if when you first turn time, when you turn on a game for the first time sometimes and it knows, and so it asks you a series of things like inverting your controls. It would be cool at saying like or answer a series of questions. What are you looking for? Maybe it's even AI and you can talk to it,
Or
and
AI will eventually just learn to watch you and go, oh, he's getting bored. He hasn't come back in 2 days. He must have gotten bored. Let's fix that, Yeah,
I love where your head's at with this stuff though, because I do think that this is actually where the long-term thinking must be. They even said it in their own financials. I haven't gone through them deeply yet because I'm going to do it for Sacred, but I did pick through them today, and they were saying like we really care a lot about MAUs. Like we really need to worry about this number. Consoles are where they're going to make their endemic money, but they need to worry about engagement. And we saw this with PlayStation.
Clear, MAUs meaning monthly average users, but how do you mean in terms of just people who turn it on once a month, or what do they mean by that?
Yeah, I think it's people. I think it's you. I think the number they were citing was use on PSN. So probably people that turn their PlayStation on and connect it to the internet. I don't know if it would go any deeper than that. I could look.
Okay.
But I think that it's just interesting because I still think console sales are mightily important. I still think it's the most important thing for their health because of the latent money they make. Like you just capture people. And I don't think people really think about that. It's like, okay, they sold you a console and broke even maybe. But now you're theirs, right? Now everything you do is going to them. It like even just a little rip or all of it for their first and second party stuff. So I still think that that's vital. But thinking about engagement, and they're doing this with PlayStation Portal, is they're just like, how can we just interrupt the way you're going about things to make sure you're thinking about PlayStation? That's going to be vital. That's why I was thinking about the smart TV app and all the other things that are inevitable. And of course, PC day and date releases. Like people that are holding out hope on the PlayStation side that this isn't going to happen are in for a rude awakening.
But
after Helldivers.
Okay. So, but what you're talking about then is in the engagement at the PSN level then, because the console is going to be, they're going to lose money. However much money, maybe they've run the numbers and they have a really great computer that can assess close to reality how much. Because I don't know what it is, 30%, depends on the publisher, but every time anything gets sold, even if it's like, Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego HD. If it sells for $40, they get 30% of that, you know,
Right.
just because it's on their system. So obviously something similar happens if it's on PSN. So is that why they're so bullish on getting you to sign up for PSN for something like Tsushima and Helldivers? Because you know they're going to lose money if they go day and date on PC. At least the percentage of people who no longer buy a console, they're not making that 30% cut off everything. So either they have to be going, we're in real trouble and it's not sustainable, or what? I mean, why would they? Why would, as much as I would love day and date, why would day and date be so valuable to them that it would allow them to give up that 30% from a person who doesn't buy a PS hardware?
I think Helldivers has shown us specifically, although it's anecdotal for now. We'll see more with like when Fair Games and Concord come out and how people react to those. But it seems to me that they captured an enormous amount of people that were never going to buy the game on PlayStation, no matter what. And to me,
why? Just because they don't buy consoles?
They don't have a console. They're not interested in it, or it's not where they want to play. I think Helldivers 2 would have been a very strong performer, probably 5 million maybe sold on PS5, maybe a little less than that.
Right.
But that's the difference between something that sells they probably would have been very happy with that, but they wouldn't have necessarily lost anything by selling that. Let's assume, and again, these are numbers that they're going to learn the more that they connect PSN to PC with their Steam accounts, especially with Ghost of Tsushima. They'll get direct numbers and figure out like, well, this person has a PSN ID. It's actually, he does own a PlayStation. He bought it on PC. We lost money on him. But I bet you what they would find in the other relationship, and this is probably why they want these things connected so they can get this data, is like, what are these truly new people? And if they are, or a lot of them are, a lion's share of them are, then I think it's obvious, at least with multiplayer games, that we go that way. And we already know that Concord is going to be day and date on PC, so, and Fair Games. So that is what they're going to do with multiplayer games. I think the bigger thing for people is the single player stuff. I get that more, and I get being more reserved by that. And I don't think they're going to do that immediately, but I would be interested in running a test on that too. I mean, if I were them, I'd be like, which of our 7 upcoming games can we put on PSC and just see what happens? And,
what do you think the gamers, the fans' reticence is with this? I mean, I don't care. I have a PS5. I have a PC. Ghost is going to come out. If Ghost comes out and it's running on GeForce Now, which means I can run it at the highest level, I'm going to buy it again. But that's me. Why would a PlayStation fan care if God of War 3, whatever they call it, comes out day and date on PC and PS6 or PS5?
I don't know. I think there is some territorialism, which I think is fine, but I think what people need to think about is the mid to long term. I always say this. You want them to make the most amount of money in the long term if you care about the brand and you care about your console, because it's true that the console will be supplemented in some part by the money coming from other places. This is what I was saying earlier about IP sharing and getting things like in, multi-platform is an interesting thing, but yeah, getting your movies and your TV shows and all of that. So from that perspective, I just think people have to look at it through the health of the console for the mid to long term. This is helping. Helldivers 2 success on PC has helped. In my opinion, demonstrably helped.
Didn't they just say it's the best selling, fastest selling PlayStation game ever?
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, the fastest selling ever. It's incredible. I mean, that's an incredible.
Yeah.
So I just think you need to see the forest for the trees in this regard. I care deeply about the PlayStation console because I like playing on it, and I understand full well that they're going to need to play ball with these other, some other platforms, specifically with PC. I don't think they're going to go any further than that, but I think that's where it's going to. Maybe some, obviously the third party stuff is going to start going to like Switch too and stuff like that, like the Final Fantasy games. But
right.
So I think I know I'm in the minority in PlayStation fans right now, but I think they'll come around when they realize and they see the further quarter by quarter breakdowns of the money that's being made over there and how it helps supplement the console. I just don't see how it ruins anything for anyone, really.
No, except their fantasy of like, I'm the winner. I have the best console, whatever. That's their own little thing. But
the reality is that they already are the winner. They're killing the competition.
Sure. Yeah, but no, I don't mean Sony. I mean the fans.
Yeah, sure. But again, through that lens, like they should see it that way and say like, but the brand you're so into is winning. Like
that's true. That's true. What does it say though? Think about this. I mean, because Disney was doing this whole, we'll greenlight this movie, but that also is going to give us a theme park and it's going to give us content for Disney Plus and blah blah blah. And I mean, Lucas was the one to really discover it with the toys back in the day when he demanded. He's like, "I want all the toy money," and they're like, "Yeah, you can have it. Nobody makes money off the toys." Okay, you idiot. But what a moron! Who was that executive? There must be like, anyway. But what does it say that our entertainment? And it's, I mean, there are things that are less expensive, but it's like things to entertain the masses have gotten so expensive that it requires a video game, a TV series, a movie, a theme park, the bed sheets, all that stuff just to merit its existence. What does it say about our inability to appreciate the fundamental of any of these mediums, whether it's movies, television storytelling, video games? It's like, are we so shallow now that most of our entertainment has to just be spectacle, or we're not interested? I mean, isn't there something weird about even the conversation that has to be had around this, that's the only thing a lot of people will respond to?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's also a really nice point to think that, and Dagan and I bring this up sometimes, that Star Wars really was that first ubiquitous IP, and there was like MASH and fucking chips Jaws and all that kind of right. But it's true that none of them, that was all upside, right? Like the Kenner toys and the fucking garbage cans and all the shit you would buy and the stickers, that's all upside. And you're absolutely right. Now it almost becomes a necessity. That's why I'm always skeptical when I read movie budgets, because I'm like, this isn't really the amount of money you're going to need to spend to get this thing in the market.
Right.
And so you're right. It does become a problem. But what you're speaking to is this endemic risk that I think people have a certain expectation out of games. The games that hit that aren't technical marvels are always random. And I don't know that you can really predict it. So like Minecraft, Pal World, right?
Do you
like
think
things
it's
like
predictable if you were smarter? Like an AI could predict it? Like, I mean, is it nothing's truly random for the most part. But I mean, do you think it's actually random, or do you think looking back somebody could say, oh, this is why Minecraft hit?
I think with hindsight, you can definitely see that. But I just think, isn't it lightning in the bottle? Like, isn't it this ephemeral timing thing?
I don't think anything's lightning in a bottle. I think but I think we perceive it as lightning in a bottle, of course.
But you're saying it could be explained, like all of it can be. And
we may not be smart enough to understand all the elements at play, but I do think that the fact that there are people who are willing, even at a bigger number than people that are willing to buy the technical marvel, that's just good, versus the total underperforming production value, whether it's a movie or a show or a game, that is genuinely connected with the essence of what that art form or what that medium is. I think that exists. I think it's important to figure out how to stop thinking of it as lightning in a bottle, because they do go to that stuff. Maybe somebody could look back and say, well, kids were comfortable enough with computers at this point when Minecraft came out that anybody comfortable with a computer is going to want to create something, and they don't want to learn to code. And this was, I don't know, but it seems to think of it as lightning in a bottle, which means we're not going to think about it, kind of is troubling, I think, because look how little you have to spend to make so much, That's
true, but maybe time is an element in terms of what is definable and what isn't definable too. What I mean by that is we have more clarity with Minecraft now, right? And the staying power of it. But I have no idea why Helldivers 2 did well. People say that it's like, well, they made a fun game. And it's like, yeah, no fucking shit, dude. If you walked into a Sony boardroom and were like, guys, the secret to Helldivers 2 was that it was fun, they would launch you into the sun. There are deeper, of course you want it to be fun. Right. I am mystified because I don't think we have enough distance from like really seeing like what is it about this weird. I think it's partially political and almost LARPy, and there's like a lot of interesting things about it, but I think we need more distance from it. So I think you're right, but I don't know. That's why I think Helldivers and games like that are so interesting, because it's like I look at that, if I were them, and I'd be like,
I don't know what the fuck we're supposed to do with this. This thing's going to bomb, not because it looks bad, but because you're charging $40 for a game that basically should be free to play. And 2 weeks later, it was the biggest thing ever. The fuck do I know? I certainly didn't think it was going to.
No, they obviously didn't think so. I mean, we talked about it. I remember on your show. I think at the time, it's like no closed beta, no like nothing to even like bubble it up. They were nervous about it. It was also in development for a long time, so I think they kind of just wanted to get it out and see what happens. But now, they have this huge hit on their hands, and I think that they're as mystified as anyone. This happens all the time. I told people many times, The Last of Us mock reviewed it in 80 at Sony. They had no idea.
Really?
Yeah.
The first one?
Yeah, the first one.
That's surprising. Okay.
They had no idea. They had no idea that the multiplayer was going to be popular. They had no idea like anything about it. And sometimes things just happen, and it's really, you put it in the wild and see, and you learn something.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. Drawn to Death did really well in reviews, in mock reviews, and Drawn to Death did really well with its humor, which was the main thing we got hammered on. It was like we were always like, is this okay? Is this offensive? Is this funny? Always good scores. And it came out, and it, you know, so yeah, you don't know.
You just don't.
You don't. Yeah. Before we get off Sony, PS5 Pro. I mean, I don't care, but I'm probably not the audience for it. All I understand is, hey, you're going to get ray tracing. I mean, my guess is because it's coming out when you're going to be getting the tail end of PS5 first party and obviously Grand Theft Auto, you're going to want those so it runs at a decent clip. I mean, that's pretty much the only reason your average person should care. Or is there something we don't know? Because ray tracing, I have ray tracing on my PC. You get over it in 5 minutes, you move on with your life. It's not that big of a deal.
I remember thinking, again, to the Insomniac leak. Thank God for that thing, right? Like, we got so much data out of it that we would have never gotten. PS4 Pro sold a lot better than I thought it was going to, than it did. People used to ask, like, how many units do you think it sold out of the 120? And I'd be like, 10? But it's more like 20.
Okay.
And I look at that and I'm like, okay, so one out of
40,
6.
right?
Right,
I mean,
right.
Financially, I assume it was double the price. I don't remember what it was.
Right, it was much more expensive.
Yeah.
And hard to find, too. I think that's one of the interesting things. It was severely supply constrained. For like several years, you couldn't find one easily, which was weird. And so maybe it would have even done better, but it could have just spoken to the constant sales churn of them. So I think they look at that and they're like, okay, we learned something positive from having a more modular approach to console gaming. And I think that what I've learned, and I learned this more and more, and I said this on the show, that a friend of mine told me this, that works on a big multiplayer game, where he's like, the default of our multiplayer game is 30 frames and 4K, and only 30% of people switch it. And what that told me was, it's like, okay, people want pretty games, right? Like, and a lot of people were even saying
play well enough.
Right. People were saying with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, for instance, like, you got to play it in fidelity mode. I didn't. I played it in performance mode, but it's like, it looks so good. And I'm like, I'm sure it does, but I care about frame rates, but I'm in the minority. There's just no doubt about that based on the data. And so I think they looked at it and they're like, well, we can increase frame rates. And I think that this will. I think we'll probably get a lot of like mid-range 40 frames a second, weird things, or uncapped frame rates. Like Pacific Drive has an uncapped frame rate, so it's at 30, but it allows it to go up a little bit more, which is cool. But I think what they looked at is like, people just want pretty shit. And we see that from our own data, and they probably have very similar data about fidelity versus performance modes on their games. And they're like, we're going to make something that can really do that. And I think the only danger they have right now is just letting this thing out of the bag too early. We all know it exists. I mean, I've talked about it for many months on our show, and had a lot of people that are working on games for it reach out to me and talk to me about it. And it's cool, but I think the biggest danger they have right now, as PS5 sales start to plateau a little bit, is like making sure that they keep this close to the vest for as long as possible, because it's really going to be disruptive, in my opinion, too. So
you don't think they're going to show it in a couple weeks?
I think that would be a huge mistake. I mean, my personal opinion is that they will do what they did when they announced the earbuds, the headset, and Portal. They tacitly said at the end of one of their conferences, like, we're going to have more to say later in the year about some hardware advancements and all these different things. Don't you think that would be a horrible idea to say it too soon? Because then PS5 sales would just stall, in my opinion.
I know, but okay, so I mean, I'm not one of these, you know, the numbers from yesterday from Sony say that their software is flying, their hardware missed the target by just a teeny tiny bit, nothing meaningful, like less than 1 million, or what was it? It was they thought they were going to sell 21 million and they sold 20.8 million,
right? Something like that. Although, it's, to be fair, that was a downward revision from 25.
Okay, so what I would say is it's time for the main console to drop price anyway, and in that point, maybe this would be a good time. So
that's a good point. Yeah, you draw that contrast.
What is the main console going for right now? If you want a PS5, is it like still $499?
I think I thought you can get it for $400, but maybe I'm wrong. Because they have like the new discless model that I think is $400. Like, I don't think they dropped the price for inflationary reasons, but they never adjusted the price. otherwise, like because there's no new model yet.
Right.
Although the Slim, I guess, dropped the price of PS3 for the second time in 2009, but I mean, there's some sort of historical precedent for it. But I just love the idea of them holding it to their vest. But you make a great point that if you see, this would have really made more sense last year when they were trying to get rid of the old model PS5s, is to say like, oh, this thing's coming. We're dropping the price of this one right now.
Yeah.
And just fucking move those quickly. But they weren't ready in time, of course. And so I'm excited about it personally, but and I'm going to get one, but I'm sure that most people don't care, and that's totally fine. And frankly, that was my mentality when PS4 Pro came out. It wasn't until I got PS4 Pro and then obviously PS5 where I really started to enjoy the fidelity of games at higher frame rates, where that made sense to me. And I do think that there's some weird machine learning shit in PS5 Pro and a slight CPU boost that might offload some of the graphical stuff that would allow them to use more of the resources to run at a higher frame rate and all the rest. So I think in other words, I think I'm not a technical person at all, but as I understand it, it seems more sophisticated than meets the eye about like what's the specific PSSR thing or whatever that they're employing.
I was going to ignore it because even you saying PSSR, I started to lose interest. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, right? So, I mean, the technical stuff means nothing to me, right? It's about what can I play? And I don't mean that disrespectfully to what you're saying. I'm saying my brain wanders when technical, like, I remember PS4 Pro was announced and Mark Cerny did this whole thing, this speech. He stood on stage and the whole Bartlett Jones studio was enamored, like making notes about the RAM and this and that and the other. And I was just like, oh my God, can we get a lunch now? Because it's just, not in my head. But the point though, is this, I lost my train of thought, Colin. Come on, I'm an old man. Listen, here's the deal. So this coming couple of weeks from now, PlayStation Showcase, State of Play, whatever it is. Whether they show this or not, I mean, Ghost of Tsushima 2 kind of seems like a shoe-in that we'll see something, a trailer, a teaser, whatever. What do you, maybe, I think if we don't see Concord and or Fair Play, something's going wrong. But what do you think they're going to show?
I don't know. I mean, I was reminded that, and they said it again in their financials this quarter, that there will be no like major sequels until March of next year. So, I think
which is which would be
so
Ghost,
I think Ghost of Tsushima 2 will probably be shown, but probably with a 2025 date. Fair Games, they reiterated, or not Fair Games, Concord, they reiterated is going to come this year in their financials. So I think that's going to be ready to really show. I think that's going to probably be one of, if not the marquee game at the end. We'll see what it looks like and what it even is.
You think they could drop it? Like, so they probably wouldn't want to hurt Helldivers 2 right now with just dropping another multiplayer.
I'd let them just get it right. Maybe have some sort of beta. Maybe really do it they need to start doing things the better way. It was interesting their admission on their tweet when they apologized for the Helldivers 2 thing, saying like we are kind of figuring it out.
Yeah.
And I hope one of the things they figured out is that they just need to whet people's appetite a little bit better in the pre-release, because I think Helldivers would have even done better, frankly, if people had played it. And so I maybe something like that for Concord. Until Dawn's coming this year, and there might be an Astro game coming later in the year as well. And then probably second and third party things. Death Stranding 2, I don't know what the status of that is. Maybe Silent Hill 2 is coming. So there'll be things at the end of the year. I actually think this is a fairly strong year for PlayStation games.
I would agree for exclusives. I mean, I haven't played Ronin yet. People who like it seem to really like it. It's probably too hard for me to even spend any time with, although I know there's an easy mode. But yeah, there is a lot of exclusive stuff. I don't really have much faith in Team Bloober Team, whatever they are. But,
me neither.
Or Konami. But
Konami annoys me, dude.
Yeah, me as well.
Can you imagine who they could have gotten to make that game?
Yes, I can. I can imagine a lot of people, including, they just put a trailer out today, the guys from Supermassive. The casting of Frank something, which is sort of in the Dead by Daylight universe. And I'm more excited about that than Silent fucking Hill. Because they make good, solid, not brilliant, but good, solid horror games. You really want to remake Silent Hill? Go get the goddamn guys at Red Candle, the Taiwanese company that made Devotion, or go get the guys who just made Indica. And that's coming out on console this week, I think, which is the nun religious horror. It's fucking weird. It's great.
Dude, imagine Konami goes to Capcom.
Oh yeah, I know.
I mean, like, to me, that's such a Konami is in such a great position to make so much money and do very little that it's shocking to me that they don't. Like, if I were, I'd be like, we want a Castlevania game. You motherfuckers come here and you pitch us the best of the best. We're gonna look. You would have people falling all over themselves.
Yeah, and they made a lot of money though. They just did their numbers too, and they said that the Metal Gear remake apparently did really well. And then they also cited Silent Hill: The Note or The Message, that free to play thing.
Yeah.
Like, why are you citing that? You didn't make any money off that. But
It had a shit ton of downloads. It was very weird.
Yeah, but it wasn't very good. It was fine. But they made money. But I just don't think they have the executives that care like that. They don't really care. They just want the money. But I agree. That would be fucking fantastic.
You think there would be some young Japanese like guys that grew up in that and would go to Konami and be like, listen, we know you don't care. You have your fucking health spas and your casino games and whatever. But like, we're telling you, just give us a little bit of money and some time and leeway, and we'll make you shit ton of money.
The difference is, though, is that shit ton of money these days is so much different than it was 15 years ago, right? So if you can go to them and say, hey, you spend $8 million and we're going to make Silent Hill indie as fuck and weird and guerrilla and it's going to disturb people, and your $8 million will become $30 million. And they're like, we could take that $8 million and help invest in, like you said, a spa that's going to make us $5 billion.
Right.
You know, they're not, everything's a widget to them now.
Totally. And I get it. I'd probably be the same way. I mean, you have a fiduciary obligation.
If that was my job and my job was to make money, why would I be spending money on this stuff? It doesn't
right.
Make
Exactly.
sense.
If you have that's why I don't really blame them. If you have a fiduciary obligation to shareholders or the board or whatever, it's like, you're going to make the choices that make the most money. You would think that they would see it as a long-term passion play to say, like, you guys actually, in this very saturated world of video games, have a few IP that are really important. Yep. And you should maybe hire a team better than Virtuous to make your Metal Gear game. And maybe you should hire a team better than Bloober Team to make your Silent Hill game.
Or go to Del Toro and say, look, this is yours. We own it, but for the next 10 years, you have carte blanche of Silent Hill as long as you make something every 2.5 years. A game, a movie, a TV series, something. Just partner it with somebody that can build the fucking value of the IP. I would agree with that. What do you think? Last thing on this, the Sony stuff is, because here's what I'm fascinated by. I remember we did God of War, and I pretty much had carte blanche, right? So I remember pitching a game called Heartland to Shuhei and Alan. And, I busted my ass. I had music playing in the background. I was doing the whole fucking thing, and she was like, okay, right? And I probably could have said, I want to make a game about boogers that are sentient and whatever. And it's not that I could have done whatever I wanted, but it was that they were like, okay, it doesn't cost that much to get into this. Let's give it a shot. We'll cancel if it sucks, whatever. These days I wonder, like, what are we going on now? So 7 years since God of War 2018, Corey's game, 6 years?
6 years, yeah, it's 2018. Yeah.
You'd think we'd be ready to hear something about his new game. But at the same time, it would not surprise me, not because it's Corey, but it would not surprise me if it was Corey or Neil or Ted Price or any of these big names in these single player worlds would be still struggling to get a green light. Because it's like, it's great that you got a BAFTA, but that's not going to pay the rent. So we need something that we know is going to sell. I mean, do you think we'll see a Corey game soon, or do you think it really is gotten a lot harder to jump through those hoops? I mean, I don't know anymore, honestly.
I don't either. My assumption is Eric Williams directed God of War Ragnarok, right? So, yes. I mean, and I know that Corey is really that lead of the studio now, and that takes him out of the commission, but it's not quite like Neil with the HBO show and stuff where he's like totally off the fucking reservation at this point. I think in some sense he earned, at a different era too, they probably greenlit this game even before COVID. So I think he's going to be given the benefit of the doubt. I think this is going to happen with a couple of other people too. And it seems like his game would be a late gen PS5 game. So, because there's the new Naughty Dog franchise too, no doubt in the works. And then there's other games, like there's an Uncharted game, obviously in development. And I was a little annoyed about this, Jaffe, between you and me and everyone listening.
Right.
People were reporting recently about there's a studio with Jason Blundell working on like a shooter. I'm like, yeah, motherfuckers, I told you that like 6 months ago. You know, that like they've been
You mean
consolidated.
after they closed?
Right. They basically what happened is they just poached a bunch of the meaningful people there. If you look at like the original Deviation executives or whatever, and like the department leads, they're basically all with Sony now and working on probably the same game, frankly. And we'll probably find that out at some point.
But it's a new studio, or is it a Sony studio?
It seems, I'm not even sure where they're working out of. Probably LA, but I was thinking maybe even San Diego because they have so much space down there. But it seems like very similar to the visual arts group. It's like an unsighted internal team of some sort. That my theory on this is that they will reveal the team like properly when the game is revealed, and they'll say we have this new team. This is what they're called.
Right.
And we made all these decisions. I wouldn't be surprised if it was Deviation's game and they kind of just took it because they're allowed. I'm sure to do that once they got their money involved in it. Something obviously went very wrong there, because Sony bought the other two teams that they announced, that they were working with. So and these
they
guys
brought
just got
the key guys in. So
so something went horribly wrong there. Jason Blundell, of course, for people that don't know, is the zombies guy at Call of Duty for the Call of Duty franchise. And so I think that there's other things in the works, but I think that Corey's game will play some sort of part in the late generation.
I'm just tired of not hearing new shit from Sony or any of these companies, but
it is annoying.
I'm ready for some new fucking shit, man. And I'm sure they are too, but it takes a long time.
My personal opinion is that there's probably some tension between like the green lights that Jim Ryan gave with the more games as a service stuff. They canceled a bunch of that stuff, obviously. A lot of this stuff's latent. Ben took a long time to get their game off the ground, and that's probably that is a service game as far as I understand, and so on and so forth. So it's like, in my opinion, the late generation is probably going to be pretty rich, because I think a lot of things that were supposed to come out or just weren't even thought of early in the generation are now a reality because of the change in strategy. And I think giving people leeway, the Neil Druckmans, like you said, the Coreys, and so on and so forth. And so, but I'm still of the mind that you don't need the PS2. Well, PS2 really wasn't very rich in first-party games compared to PS3 in some sense, with PSN and the whole spectrum of games that came out. You did some of them, like Calling All Cars and stuff like that, right? Like your very own. And so I think we're never going to go back to that era, and we don't need to. I really think that like 3 games a year is perfect, and that gives everyone 4 or 5 years to.
I would love for them to have a boutique studio or a boutique publishing arm, whether it's through Sony or through PlayStation. Give it to Shuhei and just go get the indies, right? And you're never going to make the kind of money, and so they're probably not interested. But you'd think somebody out there would be interested in making the next Devolver or making the next. I'm trying to think of these, more smaller publishers that are interested in profit, but they're not interested in the kind of profit Sony needs, because there's great shit being made, man, and people are just missing it. It's a real shame. But anyway,
it sucks. Who it would be most incumbent for the Xbox to nurture a team like a studio or a publishing arm like that.
Let's switch to Xbox in just a second, because based on what you're saying, and Matt Booty said, I do want to say, Bold Alpha Wolf says, Totoki Hitoki Moki, the current head of PlayStation, financial report showed third party doesn't move the line for PlayStation, only first party, and that's all we want. Third party absolutely moves the line. I don't know what you're talking about.
PlayStation would be out of business without third party games.
Yeah, maybe there's something else, Bold Alpha Wolf, and thank you for being a member, buddy. I appreciate it. Maybe there's something else you're talking about, but if you're talking just pure third party, they make so much money in third party, because everything they fucking sell, they get a cut of.
Yeah,
and
I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's fine. I want to talk Xbox. I want to take a few listener questions. Are you cool with that, schedule wise?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm down.
If anybody wants to talk to Colin right now, I'm going to put the link here. You can log in, and you don't have to be on the camera. You should be, because that's what a real goddamn man does. But
and you better be interesting.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If you're not interesting, I'll just hang up on him. That's how that goes. But do the best you can. We can't all be. I don't got nothing. Hang on. There you go. There's the link. Click it if you want. In the meantime, let me ask you this question. You may have seen. Kind of funny was like, hey, we're going to sunset some of these genre niche stuff, and we're going to go just everything's games. And I know you and I have talked about the value of niching down in this space, in the YouTube space or the podcast space or whatever. Do you guys? What is your philosophy now moving forward with Last Stand in general? Like, do you look at it and go, well, I mean, obviously, Sacred is humming along and everything's working, but do you see a time where you guys are going to have to maybe pivot a little bit as the industry kind of consolidates to a single platform, or you don't really see that being in the near couple of years?
No, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Okay.
It's very similar to what we were saying about console prognostication and if they would exist or not. I was at IGN for many years, as people know, and they did shut down the whole console silo for a while, thinking that things were going to fold down, and didn't really make any sense. And this was years and years ago, and it's still as partisan really as it's ever been in a lot of different ways. So we looked at what Kind of Funny did, and that's totally their prerogative, but
sure.
that wouldn't benefit our business at all to do that. I think, if anything, we're going to, our Nintendo show is twice a month now, and it's really up to Dustin and what those guys want to do. But my expectation is that they're going to bring that weekly by the time there's more to talk about. So we want to have places where people can go for speciality, and there's niching down and just getting down into the nitty gritty, I think, is fun. I think the show that's most problematic too, and we talked about this on the air with them, was Defining Duke, just with what's going on with Xbox. But I'm of the mind that the Xbox brand isn't going to disappear anytime soon, and that there's going to be another console and all of the rest, and so there'll be more to talk about. And maybe they turn into a more agnostic or PC centric show if they want to still do it at that time. But we don't really worry about it. I mean, we're doing great. So
right. Oh, of course. Yeah.
So,
no.
but I did, PS I Love You's, PS I Love You, as you know, was my second PlayStation show. Sacred is my third, and I just think they never really got it off the ground very well. Like, I don't think it really had much of a chance to find its footing, because I just don't think they had. You can't do shows like in an hour, in my opinion, anymore, and like really nurture an audience. And I think the AM radio style of like, we have a time frame, we're going to do it this way, and it's going to be very loose, it doesn't work anymore. So I think that they just never really gave it a chance to survive. But
you mean the time frame as in terms of like, it's an hour show?
Yeah, it's like an hour.
It's
like,
as
there's
long
so
as
much
it goes.
Like we go an hour without saying anything.
Yeah.
on our show. It's like,
right.
But I think that's like how you capture audiences.
Yeah.
It turns a lot of people off. In some ways, Sacred Symbols would probably be well, our KPI is Patreon, and it would probably be lower, but if we were shorter and more concise, we would do way more traffic. We just don't care about that. We care about like doing the show the right way. And so I just think you have to do it the right way or not at all. And I think that's kind of the position they were in. And so I think they made probably a reasonable decision for them, but they just do so much content.
They do.
That like, it scares me in some sense. Like, why you got to do that much content? That would stress me the fuck out. Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, you guys do the timestamps though, which is like, I mean, I like the preamble, but for the people who don't, they're just like, oh, let me get right to the news. I mean, that's the hardest thing, because my shit is very whatever I'm interested in games. And if I start talking VR, I know I lose 70% of the audience, at least for that segment. And I'm like, yeah, what are you going to do? I guess don't talk about PR. Hey, here's John. John, you're on with Colin Moriarty. What's up, buddy?
Hi, John.
Hey, Colin. Big fan.
Thank you.
I've called into Jaffe show before, but I try to call in Last Stand all the time, but it's you guys always do the call-in show sometimes when I can't make it. So
yeah, we haven't done them
it's
in
cool
a
to
while.
get stuff to here.
Oh, well, thank you for your kind words. And yeah, we got to get back to those at some point. I don't know why we haven't done them. They're fun. Believe it or not, maybe it's because it's not live, but we've never had a bad experience. Like someone like showing us their dick or something. Like something horrible like that. It's like it always goes fine.
Hey, man, today can be the day.
I know. I'm sorry.
Here we go.
Oh God, please don't.
I won't. So I wanted to call on. I know you guys were going to talk about Xbox stuff pretty soon, but I just want to talk about Tango and Hi-Fi Rush, because there's this narrative going around that like it was a successful game and Xbox shut them down. But I don't really know if I buy that. I think it was successful by Xbox's previous metrics, where they're talking about engagement on Game Pass and all this stuff. But I think when you buy a company like Activision and Satya's got to come in and say, okay, how much money are we spending? How much money are we making? Maybe Tango wasn't actually a success by those metrics. So I was wondering what you guys thought about that.
Well, it's funny you say this, John, because I think I talked about this on Sacred a week or two ago, that if you imagine the Xbox execs, Microsoft execs go to the Xbox guys and they're like, you got to cut whatever, right? %.
Mm-hmm.
And we need this much money back. And they go to ZeniMax and they're like, this is we need 20% cut. And then you list out all of the studios, right? It's like, not going to cut id, not going to cut Machine Games, not going to cut Bethesda Game Studios, not going to cut Arcane France, not going to cut ZeniMax Online that does the cash cow in Elder Scrolls Online. Eventually you get to Tango, Roundhouse, and like all these, Arcane, Austin. And so from that perspective, I just think it's the kind of, it sucks because they made a great game that everyone loved. And I do believe that Xbox was happy with it. I just think they were like, well, as far as returns are concerned or where people are in their development cycle, we're not going to cut Arcane when they're 4 years or whatever in the game. We're not going to cut Machine Games when they're about to release Indiana Jones. Tango is pitching us a game and they're not ready to go. And they're not going to give us a return for 4 years. So unfortunately, I just think they fell into that sort of pincer where they were just kind of the odd man out from that perspective. And when you look at it like that, and I don't know if you agree, Jaffe, like it seems pretty obvious that they're the ones that have to go, right? When you do list their studios like that, it's like, who else is going to go?
I think it's all. I think it's that, and I think it's also people. And I agree. I'm not a big fan at a management level of Matt Booty, but when he was saying the day after all those studios shut down, where he said, we need small games that win awards, and a lot of people were like, we don't get it. You just killed the studio that gave you that. I think what he was really saying is that we still need exclusive games that will keep people from churning from Game Pass in between the Indiana Joneses, the Avowed, or whatever. But small games now mean something different to us. With Tango Gameworks, I don't know what the budget was. My guess would be 60 million, 40, maybe Japan's like $40 million, $50 million. I'm just guessing. I have no real clue. I think he means more like we want Animal Wells and we want Crow Countries that are beloved and they win awards and they turn a profit, but the risk is so low that it's not a big deal, but it keeps people from unsubscribing. That's where I think they're going to continue to make those interesting games, but I don't think at the budget, Hi-Fi Rush was exactly the definition of a AA game. And AA is probably too expensive for a non-churn game, that's what I took from it, especially after Booty said that the day after they closed it.
John, let me ask you this.
Okay.
Think about the Bethesda family. I mean, what would you have cut instead? That's what I would, if you were met with this imperative, right, of you got to cut somewhere. I just wonder if you would have answered it any differently. Because in my opinion, I think they kind of answered it the most logically. It's a bad situation, but the right decision based on what they probably had to do.
I agree.
Are you cancel Blade, or are you going to cancel the Elder Scrolls 6 or something? What are you going to do? You're obviously going to get rid of them.
Honestly, just as a fan perspective, I would cut Bethesda Softworks because I didn't like Fallout 4. Skyrim didn't set the world on fire, and they're so expensive. And I wouldn't cut the whole team, obviously. Obviously, they shouldn't have done that. But just as a fan perspective, that's not where my mind's at. I agree with you that they're too big to be an indie, and they're not big enough to be a whole AAA thing. But I guess what I was more perplexed on was that a lot of people in the games journalism industry are running around saying, "Oh, Tango was a success and Hi-Fi was a success, and they still got cut." And I don't think that's true.
It was a success everything's a success and everything's a failure based on the definition of success and failure. So if you're talking about what Aaron Greenberg said when he said it, it was successful for what they thought they needed it to be at the time. But that was at the time when the Game Pass subs were actually growing at a clip that they were like, oh, the budget makes sense for this being in that sort of anti-churn category. But now that it's flatlined at the moment, maybe it'll never grow again. I think that changes. But, I don't, the idea that the game press is running around and saying, what madness is this? Even something great can be cut. It's like, yeah, welcome to fucking capitalism in life. How many TV shows do you love that they canceled that you're like, why the fuck would they cancel that? People were watching it. It's like, yeah, but not enough people were watching it compared to how many people were watching, some benign ABC sitcom, and we could spend more money on that and get more people and make more money. I mean, it's it's just the way it is. So I don't think I think the fact that they're writing about it like it's some kind of revelatory. What do you mean a game that people loved can be what? It's like, yeah. Where you been, motherfuckers? So that's what I would say, sir. Thank you, John.
Also, John, think about the PR aspect of it. Like, I don't necessarily think you're wrong that you could lay people off at Bethesda Game Studios to have avoided, like 50 layoffs at Bethesda Game Studios would have allowed you to keep Tango open or something like that. But that's a cash cow studio. I mean, when they hit, and the optics of that would be very bad for Starfield and very bad for the potential of the studio moving forward. So I think that, like, even though there are probably some poor performers that worked on that game, no doubt, and a lot of people that got it wrong, marketers and so on and so forth, I think, first of all, the game sold us an extraordinary amount of copies still, and I just think that that's their flagship. So that would be like, that's like when Naughty Dog like let people go. It's like, that doesn't look great.
And they also have a big expansion coming this September for Starfield. So
right,
and
the PS5
now with Fallout, right, and the PS5 port. That's right. Look, man, hey, I think that'll be great. I really, because I don't think, I was telling the chat about a week ago, I was reading this book by Steve Martin, and he was saying he has this maxim where he says, because somebody he was interviewing with said, what do you mean the Three Amigos was a bomb? That's a classic. And he said, yeah, but when it first came out, people thought it was shit. He says, yeah, it helped me develop this maxim that you really can't decide if something's good or bad until maybe like 5 or 10 years after. So I think the narrative of Starfield, which I happen to enjoy very, very much, I think it's going to be interesting to see how rewritten it is when it does come to PS5, because how much of the pylon has just been fanboy console warring that just kind of took on a life of its own, and how much of it is a valid criticism of that game. I think that'll be interesting. So, all right, John, thank you, buddy.
Bye, guys.
Bye, John.
You know, what's interesting is you were talking about the Golden Path and Stellar Blade, and I know my chat's heard me say this, so pardon me if I repeat myself, but I want to get Colin's take on this. So, I assume you didn't play Starfield yet. You'll wait until it comes on PS5.
I honestly, I don't think I'd even play it if it came to PS5. But
okay,
yeah.
So, but what's interesting about that game is that if, you know, they give you this massive amount of freedom pretty much from the get-go. And I think it was a real gamble that these guys took, which is anywhere you go, we think you're going to have a good time. That game, in my opinion, really shines in the Golden Path and some of the main sub-Golden Paths, like certain factions and stuff. If you just go off at the beginning and you're like, oh, I can get a spaceship and go to any planet, not any planet, but I can go to a lot of planets in the fucking known universe, and I'm just going to walk around and have a great time. It doesn't deliver. And I can see a lot of people walking away from it going, this was fucking boring as shit. I think too much freedom, you know, can be a bad thing. And I think in that game, it actually quite hurt them a great deal. So,
well, don't you think as a designer, that somewhere along the way there was conventional wisdom that overtook, especially the audience, that non-linearity was king and scope was king. This is what we were talking about earlier. It's like there's some value judgment placed on, oh, is it choice based, or can it be done out of order, or is there like emptiness? And it's like, I'm like, I don't know, man. I think
you can defend it philosophically either way, but I do agree with you that at some point you get high on your own product of it's a simulation and you can experience it any way you like. And it's like, yeah, but if you don't experience it in the right way, it's boring. So, you know, buyer beware. But I think if anybody plays it when it does come to PS5, hopefully they'll stick to a couple of the main paths first. Like, I'm going back now after I've finished it like 3 times and I'm doing a lot of other things, but I love the world now. But until that first playthrough, I didn't know what the world was. You know, I wanted to have that experience first. So a lot of these reviewers probably did the same thing. And I think that's a real mistake. Do you think Game Pass will ever come to PS5 or PlayStation? Do you think that's the long play for these guys, or technically it doesn't make any sense? How would that even work unless it's...
Well, I've thought for a long time that was like the inevitability. But I actually think maybe it's just maybe the a la carte stuff is actually an indication. It could be an indication of two things. It could be an indication of many things, I guess. But the first is that they need to seed PlayStation Network and other platforms with games before they bring Game Pass there, so that there's like some sort of ubiquity. There's an a la carte option.
Yeah.
But, and I'm talking about a bespoke version, by the way. Like, I would think that it would be some sort of like first and second party only Game Pass, right? Sony's never going to allow a Game Pass
third party
that competes with PS Plus, but they would allow a Game Pass, I think, with games that were otherwise not available or available a la carte. So there is some theory that Microsoft actually has to go in this order in order to get Game Pass there. In other words, like Gears of War needs to be there and all these other things. But I was always of the mind that you would get those games through Game Pass only. But it could be that they're looking at it maybe as some sort of marketing opportunity to say, like, well, you can get all this stuff for free. That's why I really think that there should be Game Pass, with free in quotes, but Game Pass splash screens when you start these games up. I would just say, like, fuck the Xbox. I'll just put like game or Xbox Game Pass in the beginning. Let it stay there for 5 seconds or get it free on Game Pass. You know, like,
oh yeah, right. No, that's what I was always thinking. Why they, why that was going to be such a big play, and putting Call of Duty, for example, on Game Pass. So you're playing it with your friends that got it for quote free, and you paid $70 for it. Same thing with Indie. Same thing with I mean, let me ask you this question. I'll get to I'll bring Andy and Embers on in a second, but let me ask this real quick. So I saw. From your Discord, the they didn't listen to Jesus, but Jesus was right.
Oh, yeah.
Let me show the audience what I'm talking about real quick. You son of a bitch! This is from the last
Galatians.
Yeah, it's where did it go? This is from Colin's Discord. Okay, and it's Game Pass is not sustainable, and people are saying shut up. And it's the guys who didn't like the Jesus, and they hated Colin because he told them the truth. All right, so let's whatever. Fuck you. The point being, I don't buy that narrative yet. I'm not saying it is or isn't. And a lot of people have kind of come out and they've let me get rid of the screen, and they've kind of said, "See, we told you," and I'm like, yeah, but you haven't seen, and we may never see the vision that I've been proselytizing and supporting, which is the vision that was pitched to me by Microsoft. This Christmas or this fall is really the only, and I'm not one of these, give them another chance. Fuck them. If they go under, they go under. I don't give a fuck. I think Phil Spencer's a moron at this point. And Matt Booty literally probably needs help getting to his car at the end of the day. That's how poor he is at making decisions. He's like, I don't know how to turn the key. He's a moron. He's a nice guy. But what the fuck's he doing? Anyway, point being,
good question.
Yeah. But point being is like, okay, so here we come with Indiana Jones, probably Call of Duty, although Sarah Bond left some very clear wiggle room in her statement that everyone's taking to mean that Call of Duty is day one, but fine. Call of Duty day one, Indiana Jones, let's say that works. Let's say Avowed works. Let's say the Starfield extension is pretty good, and then Towerborn's supposed to be really great from people who've played it. Let's say they finally deliver the rest of this year with real quality products day one on Game Pass. Do you think at that point the worm turns, or is it's not going to turn because it was never going to turn? Or do you think the reason it hasn't actually become what they've promised is they haven't yet until this fall delivered that cadence of high quality must play games?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think, first of all, I think out of all of the games you mentioned, except for Call of Duty, obviously, Starfield was going to be the biggest needle mover.
Yeah,
and
it wasn't, most people didn't like it, right? I mean, it wasn't that it wasn't, is that a statement about Game Pass, or is that a statement about the fact that the game wasn't satisfying to a lot of people?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you're right about that. Maybe, I mean, it's maybe unclear. It's a little nebulous. And like you said, we might get more data, because I know they've done a lot of updates to the game and people probably haven't played it in some time. So maybe when this expansion comes out, if you have Game Pass, you're just going to get it for free. So, or as part of your subscription. I hate saying it's free because you're not getting it for free.
I know.
As part of your subscription, then maybe you go check it out. You find something and it ages better. I wouldn't be surprised if Starfield aged better. I also wouldn't be surprised if Starfield's not as bad as a lot of people say it is. But it's just not my kind of game anymore. I just don't want to play it. It's the same thing with like Skyrim was the last one I even tried, and I was like, yeah.
I didn't like
and Fallout
Skyrim.
4 actually a little bit too. But yeah, I just don't want to do it. But so I just don't know that any of the games you mentioned are really going to matter that much. And I think what Microsoft has certainly realized is that they're undercutting their games' commercial value by putting them on Game Pass. I mean, a game like Indiana Jones as a $70 game or a $60 game or whatever, its proposition would usually be pretty high and pretty exciting. I think there's some like sort of value proposition people make where they get value out of value. So, I mean, if you're going to have a subscription, then you're going to get, I think, just less hype out of a lot of the products you release, which is why I was so interested about Blade just totally eschewing any Xbox iconography or Game Pass iconography, because it said a lot to me. I think the one really important thing, and you're right about this fall is, and this is what I was so shocked about, and I was making fun of them on Sacred Symbols, was the Call of Duty thing is a no-brainer. I mean, if you're not going to put Call of Duty on Game Pass, you should have never bought Activision. That was a huge mistake. Like, the entire purpose, I would have assumed, was to put Call of Duty on Game Pass as soon as humanly possible. And though it took them a long time to get the deal closed, we had all known that last year's Call of Duty was the last one Sony had locked up in marketing, and that, you know, the world is going to be their oyster now. If they don't... So, first of all, Tom Warren, I think, was the one that reported over at The Verge that there's still arguments behind the scenes on if they're going to do it or not, and that it's not as clear cut. And to me, I'm like, are you kidding?
Well, yeah,
like,
I mean,
I hold on a second. Let me just finish this before I forget this thought. There's no doubt that they're going to lose money doing that, putting it on Game Pass. Like, they're going to cut into their a la carte sales on their most significant sales driver in the third party, just like PlayStation, right? But you knew that. Like, didn't you already know that? Like, this was part of the ultimate value proposition. So now that you're second guessing it, it shows me that they're not in a really strong position with the subscription model. And the last chance, and maybe the best chance, is Call of Duty. But even then, I don't know. Like, I just feel like games aren't suited to this in a lot of ways.
They absolutely may not be. But I think one of the challenges they have is assessing, like, if what you're saying is correct and they bought Call of Duty for Game Pass, then they bought it at a time where they believe, just like me, that what Phil Spencer was saying is we're going to deliver quality products. So by the time Call of Duty comes out, you guys will see we're growing already, and look how much we're going to grow with Call of Duty. But now they're in a situation where Phil and his boys haven't lived up to their end of the bargain, and they've released some games, and none of them are amazing, worth writing home about in terms of getting people to subscribe. And so now they're like, that's to me why I struggle with people saying, see, Game Pass doesn't work. I'm like, well, you haven't had it what they've promised. But now you're right. They may never give it what they promised if Call of Duty doesn't come out day one.
Well, it reminds me,
in it, but
let me use a sports analogy, if I might. I love sports, right? You have this championship caliber team, right, with a lot of potential. And the contracts are all lined up. You have everyone locked in, right? And you play your seasons and you're never reaching your full potential. I think at some point people are like, well, it doesn't matter what your potential is. Like, you didn't do it, and like, you just didn't execute. It doesn't matter. And none of this other stuff matters. And I just think Game Pass is great for two things, in my opinion. Discoverability, right? Mm-hmm. If you're like just looking for things to play, and it's great for audience capture. Like, it's super great for that. Thanks, man.
Howdy.
Yep. Mike making a cameo.
Yep.
To bring me my water. Thank you for that. And so I just think you have to lean into those things or just not do it. And if you want to capture an audience, one of the essentials of having a subscription service, you got to put Call of Duty on it. It's a no-brainer. And you see where the dice roll brings you, but I don't know. I mean, I just think that people don't play games like this, and that it's showing that the proposition is plateauing and reached some sort of ceiling, at least as it's currently constructed, because I think people realize it's not even about the buying games thing is good for the health of the gaming economy, which it is. But it's just that people buy into a product and then they don't feel rushed with it. It's just you absorb it, you play it. It's not a TV show. It's not a film. It's not music. It's its own kind of thing. And so I just don't think that it's like, I'm not even sure Sony with their games would have much more of a compelling product in some sense. It's like, I think there's still a ceiling. There's going to be a ceiling with Nintendo. I think people just play games differently, buy games and absorb them differently. And I think that you just get more money out of buying Starfield. In my opinion.
It becomes a real, I don't know what a great philosophical name for this is, but and it's not chicken and egg, but it becomes one of those things where it's like, the reason I was excited a lot for it to succeed was because I thought it could change exactly what you're saying and what we were talking about earlier, which is there are too many games are too long, blah, blah, blah. It's like suddenly if people start to get used to 4-hour narrative games that make sense as non-churn games in between the big releases on Game Pass, suddenly that starts to become a bigger part of the market, and people start to realize the business model is no longer having to affect the quality of the title. Kind of like what we saw with Netflix, where Netflix now has shows that are 24 minutes, and sometimes an episode is 20 minutes, sometimes it's 28 minutes. It's not like network TV where it's like, no, it's got to be 24 minutes because you got to have those 6 minutes of commercials because we've already sold them. That affects the creativity, you know? And so for me, that's what I was hoping. But I guess, yeah, you're right. There's so many threads of fate at play that have to come together that, you know, who knows which one was really going to drive it. But it was all built on the bones of Phil being able to deliver. And I'll tell you, man, I don't, you know, but I don't know if you saw this. I'm going to bring Ember in a second. I'm sorry, guys. But I don't know if you saw this. Hasbro just set aside $1 billion, and they said we're going to start internal development, and external development. Do you know they
including
decided,
a GI Joe game, AAA game?
Yeah, I understand. But you know who's in charge of it?
I don't think
Guy
so.
who ran 343 was an executive at 343 for 7 fucking years.
Really?
The fuck? I mean, why is this hard? There are people out there, whether you're Microsoft or Hasbro, that have done this job, and they have done it well. Why are you hiring these people instead of people who have proven their ability to manage this shit?
That's where a Sean Layden makes sense.
Absolutely. A Sean Layden or a Connie Booth. I don't know why she's at EA. She's not going to be happy at EA. You and I both know it.
Maybe she didn't want to move. You know?
Fair enough.
I think in some sense, I don't know, dude. There is a talent deficit, certainly, with the Xbox executives because they were not able to execute. Or, I mean, there's only two arguments, right? Either it can't be done, or they failed to do it.
That first argument is not valid because it was Sony does it, Nintendo does it.
Right, exactly. That's why I'm saying like it is only one or the other. You're at the fork in the road. It's either you can't do it or it's not possible, and you didn't do it. And dude, I've said it before, and you know I feel this way. And I know how much you love Game Pass. I think Game Pass was the right call for Xbox to make. I think when they made the call, it made sense. And I do think that you're right that in many ways we'll never really know because it's an execution problem. But I also think that there have been major klaxons sounding for many years about the viability of this from other people that really knew what was going on in the industry. And I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about like people like Strauss Zelnick or
Kotick.
Bobby Kotick, right? And you know, Jim Ryan saying on the stand under oath, like, quote unquote, as I understand it, they're losing a lot of money on that, right? And because they do understand it. It's not some like ethereal thing that they can't grasp. They get it. They're all making games. And so I think that that's a frustrating thing to know that under a different steward, we would have probably gotten a better outcome. But there can be no doubt that the team that is leading them, you know, so Matt Booty with studios and Greenberg with marketing and Phil Spencer at the top failed.
Absolutely.
And it's incredible to me. Doesn't mean they're bad people. Doesn't mean they don't know games. It doesn't mean anything. They just made bad choices, right? Yes. Phil Spencer probably knows much more about games than I'll ever know.
Phil Spencer is hard to hate. I don't hate anybody, but he's really hard to dislike because he can talk the goddamn talk. Maybe he plays games more than he should. Maybe he should have his ass in the office more. I don't fucking know. But to hear this guy go on about the history of Baldur's Gate and all this shit, I mean, he's a gamer, man.
Yeah, he knows games, and I think he understands how they're made and all those things, but you made bad calls. Where does the buck stop in this situation? Like, who is responsible? Since he took, everyone's like, well, he came in and kind of saved Xbox One and all of that. And I'm like, fair enough. But Xbox has been increasingly irrelevant.
Yes.
Nonetheless.
Yep.
You know, as Nintendo has stormed back, as PlayStation, people don't realize, you know, because you were there for so many years, Sony is like huge now compared to the way they were even 10 years ago.
I don't even recognize them anymore. Yeah.
In terms of how much money they're making. So people are making money in this space. Obviously, the rise of mobile and free-to-play and games as a service happened all around them. It's a lack of execution and talent. And I think that what I'm so surprised about with a lot of Xbox fans' responses, although they're softening in recent weeks, obviously, is why are you so beholden to these people? Like, it doesn't make any sense. the PlayStation fan base.
Were you beholden to PlayStation at the launch of the PS3? I mean, you probably raked them over the coals, right? I mean, you still liked PlayStation, but I mean, they made some boneheaded decisions.
Yeah, I mean, some of the worst decisions you can possibly make. Some of the PlayStation 3 era and the transition, and again, you were in the belly of the beast, was the epitome of bad execution, bad decision making across the board.
It was terrible.
You know, and even with where games were going and what games were being greenlit and all that, it was a very confusing time, and a lot of people paid the price for that.
Yeah.
You know, so both in Japan and in the States and in Europe. And so that's why I'm confused. It's like, I get you're beholden to a brand. I get you're rooting for a brand. You have an investment here. You like it here. You have a history, nostalgia, all the rest. I get that. And I think it's awesome. But I just don't understand why you don't get that the people that are leading you down this primrose path have a need to go. And if you don't believe that there are people in Microsoft and certainly outside of it that can run this better, then you're delusional. But my theory on this, Jaffe, so here's where it gets 4D though. And I wonder what you think of this. My feeling is that they're letting these guys ride because when they do fire them, it's going to be an incomplete overhaul of maybe even renaming the brand into Microsoft Gaming or something like that, which I had mentioned a few weeks ago and I saw mentioned recently.
Yeah, I saw that too.
In a different context too. It seems like that is inevitable in some sense. I don't think that's a really bad thing, because I think what they now need to, they had the guy that was like, we're a console, we're this, we're that. What they need to really embrace now is like, no, we're going to be the biggest games publisher in the world. And maybe we'll have a subscription service, certainly, but we own all of this stuff. We're going to put it as many places as we can and make money. And now we need people that know how to do that.
Yeah.
And that's not 100%. You.
Right.
You know? So
right.
that's where I stand on that.
I hope if this Christmas comes and goes and Call of Duty is on there and Game Pass does not deliver, and they are firing on all cylinders, they need to go. And if it doesn't deliver, they need to go. In terms of if the games themselves are not firing on all cylinders. This short of the games being great and finally Phil going, see, I fucking told you motherfuckers, which I would love to see, they absolutely need to go. And it's easy to argue they should have been gone a long time ago. I mean, you know, but it is what it is. All right, here's Ember's Arcade. I see your super chats. I'll get to him in just a minute, but I want to bring Ember in. Ember, it's Jaffe. What's going on?
Hi, Jaffe. Hey, Colin. How you guys doing?
Hello.
I have two quick questions. One very, very small question for you, Jaffe. You play Marvel Snap, right?
I love it.
What kind of deck are you running?
I'm not going to tell you. You know why? Because I don't do decks that I get from the internet. I make my own shit. I roll my own baby, and I never tell people my deck.
I do too, man. I do Cooks. I'm like a top 100 in the world player, man. I'd love to talk Snap.
I don't even know what kind of deck I have. I fuck around with it. I'm not great at the game though. I finally got to Infinite last season. It was the first time I ever made it. Thank you. And that was a deck that I cooked up on my own. And that's more fun because I have run a deck before that somebody had made, and I went to like Snap, whatever the big Snap site is, and I copied it and I played it exactly like they said, and I did great. And it was fun for about 2 days. And I'm like, but this is not me. This is me just doing data entry. You know, I want to fucking do this fucking shit. All right, well, that's my answer. What's your second question?
My second question was more about Microsoft and Xbox Game Pass, since that's relevant to what we're talking about. So recently, Game Pass got Diablo 4 onto the service.
And they got their new big patch today. I can't wait to play it.
I'm playing it as we speak. It's great.
Is it good? Is it as good as they say?
Well, I mean, I've been in it for like 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm rolling a Necromancer in Diablo 4. It's great. So I'm curious about the economics of live service games being added to Game Pass, and with Blizzard's acquisition Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, they now have access to a great deal of live service games. Blizzard's umbrella being World of Warcraft and Overwatch and Diablo, and these very prolific live service games. I mean, I was surprised to find out recently that there are still 7 million subscribers to World of Warcraft after all this.
So what's your question then?
So the question being, how do the economics work in Game Pass if they bring those games onto Game Pass? Because I bought Diablo 4 when it released last year for $60, and I've played it for many months at a time. And it would take, if a person has PC Ultimate or something like that, a person to pay 4 months worth of Game Pass in order to spend as much money as I have in Diablo 4, and then they'd have to exist in that world longer in order for Microsoft to extract more value out of that person than someone like me who paid it.
Okay, I got you. All right, Ember, I'm going to let you go, but I'll have Colin answer that. All right, thanks, buddy. Yep. I don't know. My guess, Colin, would just be that it has everything to do with they're hoping it'll pay off in subs and then microtransactions after you have the base game. Is there something else that I'm missing on that?
No, it's funny listening to him because he's getting so close to like the, you know, like, not that he's one of the people that doesn't understand the argument, but it's like you're almost making the argument, right? Because you can just say that for almost everything that's on there. The only answer to the overwhelming number of questions about like, well, how does this make sense, and how does this make sense, and how do you do this, is like you just have to have a shit ton of subscribers, and that obviously was always the goal, like 100 million, you know, like something insane like that, and then you'd probably make money, actually, and lots of it, but. No, not like this. So I have no idea. I don't know what
maybe their mobile store will have Game Pass, and suddenly all these mobile players will subsidize the core gamers. Maybe, I don't know.
That's kind of that would be ideal for Xbox players. I mean, that's what I'm talking about with PC players.
Yeah,
kind of giving us their money and being like, okay, that's fine. I don't give a shit. I mean, that's gonna help us. It is so interesting, the value proposition, because the value proposition at Game Pass is extraordinarily high. I've never disputed that. It's enormously high. It's funny because it's like, how much more value do you even need to put into it? At some point, it's like kind of crazy. So now you're going to have like a WoW subscription and Diablo DLC and Call of Duty. And I was like, holy shit, how do you make money unless it's $34.99 a month, you know, or something like that?
Yeah.
Game Pass is going to be very expensive, ultimately. I think they're going to raise the price. I think that was the rumor. There's also word of another tier, maybe, which would be kind of interesting.
Another what?
There was rumors that maybe I was reading that there would be another tier as well, which would be interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know though, dude.
Put some ads in a tier, you know, you pay $5, but you got to watch ads in between levels. I don't give a fuck. $5, I'll do it. Although I'd probably pay out of it, but you know, I'm down with that. Hell, I pitched that to Microsoft 10 years ago. But anyway, whatever. I hear you. All right, Andy, you're on with good Sir Colin. What's up, buddy?
All right. Hey, guys. So I don't want to change the conversation too much. And I also hope you don't hate this question, but I think it's relevant given what EA said recently.
Boy, you've set that up to make us really look forward to what you're about to say.
Well, don't get too excited. But I'm wondering about, you know, because we've seen EA talk about like generative AI. They want to put all of that in their games, right? Mm-hmm. And so the obvious question is, well, like, where are the games? Because every studio is talking about it, and it more seems they're kind of focused on cutting costs almost, rather than kind of building these like fundamentally new experiences that you can have around the concept itself, right? Specifically like audio and text. And so my question is around, do you think like essentially entirely new experiences will be able to get built, or is this more something that like games will just integrate into very small parts kind of underneath the surface, or just something we just totally ignore entirely?
It's both.
It's all sham.
I think it's both. And I know Colin's not a fan. I'm a huge fan. But I think all you have to do is look at ChatGPT's videos from yesterday.
Oh, I was watching those. Scary.
Right? So Colin says scary. I say delightful. Conservative, liberal. It's exactly how it works. I mean, because I can see how it would be scary. And I don't mean that like belittling scary's bad. But, you know, there are people that look at it and see, oh, this is terrible. You're not going to be able to tell this person from that person. But the fact that, you know, imagine that game. I mean, seriously, I would play a game, and I know this isn't going to appeal to most people watching the show, but fuck you. But if it was kind of like Aaron Sorkin writes an AI, and I can just, you know, I'm going to play this game, and I just get to sit and talk to, you know, a therapist written by Aaron Sorkin. Okay, I'm in. But the point, though, is that, yeah, I think you're going to see small things and big things. You're going to see things like textures and procedurally generated levels that, in fact, the guys at Google the other day, not today's announcement, but the other day, they were saying that their guys are working on procedurally generated content that writes itself in real time based on what the user experience demands. So the level changes, the narrative changes, blah, blah, blah. So I think we're going to see big changes like that and the NPCs and all that shit. And we're also going to see, hey, it's going to speed up, you know, QA. It might destroy QA, frankly, at least most of the jobs. It's going to speed up just kind of the busy work of development, you know, things like that. So I think it's going to be wonderful. But Colin, what do you think?
Well, I agree with you that it's going to be both, but I think it's going to be one then the other. So like, I think there's some sort of endemic risk in deploying AI in too many obvious ways. And so I think that kind of stuff is going to happen. Like Andrew Wilson was talking about FIFA. And I think that that's the kind of thing where it's like, yeah, you get it somewhere where people are going to be, they're not going to, or whatever they call it now, football club or whatever, where they're not going to leave and they're never going to, you know, be scared away from little updates. And then I think ultimately this culminates once the technology is honed and experimented with and so on and so forth. Then I think you see large new experiences, which is what Jaffe has talked about ad nauseum in some sense of like really adaptive games that know you. You know, that's where it will it will end up. But I think a lot of it is going to be what Andrew Wilson said in his example, as I said earlier in the show, like the idea of getting FIFA stadium creation from months to weeks to days. And that's got a lot of implications for game availability and for artists as well, and for people that make games. But it'll be good for the games business, certainly. Whether or not that's good for our souls is another thing entirely.
I don't believe that the souls part, but I believe everything else. But I will say also, though, Serve in the chat is saying it's going to lay off a bunch of people, but people don't talk about that. People talk about that all the time. I'm not blind to that. No one's blind to that. But I think ultimately, it's progress, and we need to do a better job as humans taking care of each other and having universal base income and bringing a little bit more socialist ideas into our environment in order to take care of people. But that's a different conversation. But all you have to do is watch what ChatGPT was doing yesterday. It was like talking to a real goddamn person. If that's actually not just smoke and mirrors, but that's the thing that they ship in a couple of weeks as they're promising, my goodness gracious. I'd love for my fucking, I'd love to have a co-host on my show at times. And it's just the fucking AI, and I'm just talking to it, and I'm saying, "Hey, Colin just said this. What do you think about that?" I think it's fucking brilliant. I love it. Yeah. All right, Andy, be well. Thank you for calling in and contributing, man. I appreciate it.
Bye.
All right, let's bring on Good Serve. Well, hang on, we got to bring Joe on. He was on first. Here we go. Joe's driving in Boca Raton, smoking the weed.
My God.
Wearing a shirt now that says pizzas? I don't give a fuck. What's going on, Joe?
Pizza Planet. I just got out of work. I'm headed to the gym now.
Of
just
course
wanted
you
to
are.
call you guys one more time.
Yeah.
But my question has to do with like the Xbox takeover. My initial reaction when all that went down with all the closures is that what we all feared is true, is that Xbox can't run talent. And what I'm most afraid of now is the ubiquity of Sony and the cockiness of Sony. And are we going to have I feel like we're already seeing the beginnings of it, where they're overly cocky and make bad decisions all over again.
Give me an example. I don't see, I don't think they can afford to be cocky, and they know it. Where are you seeing Sony express themselves in that way?
Just the lack of showing off their games the past year, and then most recently the Helldivers 2 situation, how they thought they could just jump the PC players with them signing on to the PlayStation.
Okay,
network.
but in both cases they walked it back. They said, "Oh, we're sorry, we got it wrong." So within a week, and then the other thing, the not showing their games, 100%. But they don't have to. If gamers aren't abandoning them because we're not seeing anything, Sony's just kind of going, look, we don't have to tell you what we're making. You're still going to show up. Is that arrogant, or is that them just responding to what their audience is asking for? Like, the paying audience doesn't seem to give a fuck. They're still selling the shit out of their games, right?
Right. And I guess the greater fear is, what if Colin's thing is, what if Xbox goes away completely once Phil Spencer's out of there? It just becomes Microsoft games. If PlayStation is the dominant console and the only one, and I guess you got Nintendo playing second fiddle, what's that going to mean for us in the long term? You
kick the hornet's nest now, saying Nintendo's playing second fiddle. I got people in the chat saying, why aren't you guys talking about Nintendo? They're the only
Don't
fucking
discount Nintendo. I know.
Yeah. But I hear you. I don't know. Let's see what Colin has to say. Thank you, Joe. Drive safe, buddy.
You got it. Thank you.
All right. See you, man.
Bye. I think I see what he's saying from a perspective, but you already nipped it in the bud, which is that they just decided that they're not going to say anything anymore. And people went, why would anyone notice this? The announcement of the dual CEOs was the first press release PlayStation released this year, the first one.
Okay.
It was May 13th. You can go to their press hub right now and see it. It's so crazy. They used to send shit out all of the time, They say so little, and they're selling so. I think I read on Twitter that adjusted for time, PS5 is only 500,000 units behind PS4. And they just look at that and it's like, well, obviously we have nothing. We don't really need to do very much, or what we say doesn't really matter, or we can injure ourselves
every
by
time
saying
we
too much.
speak, we run the risk of fucking up.
Right.
Not because
Exactly.
they're bad, but just because that's the risk of speaking publicly at a big company.
Indeed.
Why would we ever say anything?
I'm totally with you where the obvious answer is that they learned over time that it didn't matter. And it might have mattered at one time, but it definitely doesn't now. And I think that that's why they've entered, and it's not quite the same Apple talk so much, but why I make the argument that PlayStation has entered an almost Apple conceptual space as a game console, where it's like a brand in and of itself that's high end and people are attracted to it, and you can't even really ask people to explain why. You know, it's like
right.
They kind of
was
were just
a day I could explain why with Apple. I can't anymore, but I know what you mean now. With Jobs around, as much as a pain as he was, it was what a joy to be a fan of Apple back when he was running the roost, or ruling the roost. But now, I don't even know. My next phone may not even be a fucking iPhone, which is the first.
Yeah, I'm totally locked into iPhone, but I have, like I've showed you, I have the shitty SE, like the one with the one that has the button on it.
Yeah.
Still.
Oh yeah, the old school.
Yeah,
well,
love
it's
it.
new, but yeah. As a level designer, says Jason, I can imagine handcrafting the player path with an environment artist and then having AI fill all the space around. Props are a no-brainer too. Right. Exactly. I gave an example the other day. I was playing this game. It's on PS Plus right now. The Zua game, the Zao game. It's kind of Metroidvania, but he's the kind of like African future.
Zao Kinzera.
Zao.
Yeah.
And it's really, really good. But when you listen to the director, he did an interview on NPR and he was talking about how it was all about his father's death and coming to grips with grieving and all this stuff. And I was like playing it going, I'm enjoying it, but I'm not getting any of that. So I go to ChatGPT and I say, hey, give me some examples. I want you to help me design some mechanics that reflect the grieving process. And I don't want it to be like a literal, it's a cutscene. I want it to be like gameplay wise. And, it took us about 20, 30 minutes and we were working together, brainstorming together with the tool. And there were some really good ideas, right? The idea that I should be like, oh, that's bad. It's like, why? I could have come up with those ideas on my own, but it would have taken me 3 days and probably 5 brainstorming meetings. And I got it done in 20 or 30 minutes. I'm with this level designer that just wrote. I agree. It's going to speed things up and let you focus on other stuff. It's not soulless. This guy in the chat, Tizak Wave. What does that even mean? Literally, if you play the game that was not made by AI, there's nothing about what the director says it's about other than in cutscenes. This was literally working with me to come up with mechanics like levels that looked better and were easier, but the longer that you played them, the weaker that you got. And it was all about dealing with grief and denial and how when you learn of someone's death, you don't process it at first, but the longer you stay in that denial, the worse it gets for you, right? And I was like, okay, that's clever. That's interesting. Although somebody wrote to me and said, God of War Ragnarok is all about Kratos being unable to give up his past because every time he throws the axe, it comes back to him. And I'm like, that's brilliant. That's fucking awesome. I love that shit. Anyway. Okay. This is Vitaphone. We got 2 more and then we're going to get the super chats and we're going to wrap it up. Vitaphone, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, just wanted to say, big fan, Colin. Been a big fan since, way back in the day. Until your response to Mass Effect 3.
Don't you have anything nice to say to me?
Oh,
Vitaphone?
No, I love you, Colin.
All right, go ahead.
So obviously Microsoft has dropped the ball. No arguments there on the rollout of, us never really getting the Game Pass that it's promised. But I think that what Microsoft did was more of a response to core gaming. Let's just say at very least it's stagnant. The audience hasn't grown when you look at the console sales for 5 generations now, and there's plenty of signs that it may be contracting. So I think that was kind of their attempt to not just grow their brand, but also, hey, gaming's got to grow as a whole. So yeah, I get that people don't like Game Pass, but I think it's something needed to change, and obviously this is. At this point doesn't look to be working out. My only question really, and I'm try to couch it as respectfully as possible, but what exactly, if you strip Sony's brand, if the PlayStation 5 wasn't called the PlayStation 5 and it didn't have the Sony brand, what is Sony doing that is this generation that you think, at least Colin, that is praiseworthy versus, I guess, and I'm not saying that you nonstop hate on Microsoft, but when you look at their fighting cross-platform, they didn't want to do any sort of plan like Game Pass at first. They were drug into that. They're kind of the reason that games are $70 now. So kind of what do you think ultimately, what would be your case for what is Sony doing this generation that's pro industry and pro consumer? And that's, I just want to kind of leave it at that.
No, that's,
I love your shows. I watch them all the time. But
how dare you?
Just kidding.
How dare you? No, I think it's a great question. It's what I was saying earlier about, well, it goes into at least what I was saying earlier about how I feel like PlayStation, the brand, has morphed into some sort of Apple-like entity where it doesn't always justify itself nor need to, because there's just an attraction to it with an audience that is, I know what that's like with Apple because I can't really explain it. I'm just there and I've always been there and I'm not going anywhere. Right. And I think that Sony has identified something similar over the years where they have multiple generations of quality, nostalgia driven, product, and maybe through the PS4, a more aggressive strategy in marketing that product and talking to the audience. And so I think the PS5 is a bit of a mystery to me too. And in fact, I kind of glean something a little bit different than a lot of other people do from it, which is people keep saying this, and it's true in some sense, that the console player base is stagnant. But I would also argue that we're now in a situation where only 2 of the 3 console manufacturers are truly in a healthy position. And of course, if you have one fewer selling at what, think about the 360, PS3, and Wii. Mm-hmm. It's like 85 million, 87 million, 100 million. That's ubiquitous success. But when you only have 2 players, or 2.5, let's say, that are really getting you there because one's console sales are falling off, it's kind of, in my opinion, it's not disingenuous to suggest that the console market is really truncating, but because it is, but it's getting there for different reasons, I think. And so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say those consumers, if they still exist, they could just choose Nintendo or PlayStation, yet they're electing just the core gamer market is shrinking because they're not making a choice between them.
Right. No, that's exactly right. I mean, that's why I was saying, like, there's no doubt that that's like an inexorable trend, but I think it looks somewhat magnified. For instance, PC gaming is kind of a buttress against this. I think what we need to call it more is like core gaming, right? Or non-games as a service, non-lifestyle gaming. I think the only thing that Sony has done really well this generation, in my opinion, because I think the PS5 is awesome, but the reason I think it's awesome is because it's just a great ecosystem to play a lot of different games. They've kind of stayed out of the way. The thing that they're missing, I think, this generation that I think makes the difference to a lot of people, and probably people like yourself, and certainly to me to a degree, is where are the differentiators? We have them once in a while. I know Demon's Souls was one of those for a lot of people, Returnal. Of course, we have Horizon games and God of War games, but they're generational, and games are coming to PC now, like Ghost of Tsushima, so that's kind of diluted. So the answer is that PS5 is a less distinguished machine, I think, than some of its predecessors, because it does a lot less. But because they've crossed this paradigm where they are kind of like this ubiquitous brand, it's nonetheless this machine that's in 60 million, and count. Like, PS5 is going to sell more than 100 million units. And that's going to be a major success. And I think that there's something passive about that they're probably pretty excited about, which I think folds all into their lack of communication strategy, holding games closer to their vest, acting maybe in a more arrogant way, but an unspoken arrogant way. It's not like it was with the transition of PS2 to PS3, 2005 to 2007. So that would be my answer. I don't know if it resonates or washes with you, but I think that the answer is generally speaking that PS5 is a less distinguished machine, but it doesn't really need to distinguish itself anymore because it's not that era. And so there it is. And I looked at the data. I'll dive into it more on Sacred this week when I have more time to really read it, but sales figures seem pretty strong for games. They're down, I think, year over year because they had such a meteoric quarter a year, like YOY, but quarter over quarter, they're growing. PSN's growing. Costs are coming under control. Operating income is rising. They expect in the midterm that operating income will continue to increase as even console sales decrease. So I think what you see with the Paramount purchase and some of the restructuring of PlayStation and other things is their multi-tendrilled like entertainment approach that I think will help get some of the pressure off PlayStation as well. And I don't know if you read, either of you, in the financials, they said that the most investment they're going to put into the company is in music, which
they said they said they gave a number for all of Sony. Was it a bill? How much was it? It was
they had like bill. I think it was tens of billions for acquisitions still, but they said that most of it will be earmarked for, I guess, music. I don't know if they want like back catalog stuff or whatever they're doing, but
right, could be.
So yeah, Sony is an entertainment company and not an electronics company anymore, and I think that they're adjusting to that reality so that maybe by the time PS6 comes out or this hypothetical PlayStation app on smart TV that I think will come eventually, we won't even think about them as a machine anymore, which will of course make the name a misnomer in some sense. But
all right, thank you, Vitaphone. Thanks. See you, buddy.
I hope that made sense. I don't know.
It made total sense. I mean, I think what you mentioned Returnal, which I think is a classic. Demon Souls is the first Souls game I think I've ever really played. I loved it. But honestly, I think Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is the first video game I ever played where it delivered on the whole we want to make a playable Pixar movie. I mean, that felt so good, and it was just so well made and so beautiful, and it's tragic. Did that ever come out to PC or not?
I think it didn't. Let me look.
I mean, that's sad that thing doesn't have a bigger audience. I think it's the best Ratchet they've ever made, but I could be wrong. Jarrett, it's Jaffe and Colin. What's going on, man? I said man, but I had food in my mouth. I was not doing.
It did come. By the way, it did. Last summer. Okay.
Oh, well, maybe people just didn't show up for it. What's up, Jarrett?
Hello, Jaffe and Colin. I'm a longtime fan of you both.
Mm-hmm. I'm a fan of yours too. I love it when you take that needle and you stick it. It doesn't matter. The point is, Jarrett, welcome to the show.
All right. I just want to ask you guys about Donkey's publisher and his new game, Animal Well, which I haven't played yet, but I've only heard great things about it. Mm-hmm. My question is kind of two-pronged. First off, are there any lessons that the games industry can learn from this game's success? And then on a personal level, do you guys look at it and think you could do something like that? Obviously, Jeff, you have a storied history as a games designer. Colin, you have Lilymo. You both have an eye for quality in games. Could either of you see yourself trying to go about like taking pitches from indies, then identifying funding and giving feedback on games that look exceptional to you, as opposed to what you guys have done in the past with like trying to develop games yourself?
Do you want me to go first? Yeah. So
I mean, because you currently are in that business. That's my old business. So
yeah, I mean, we develop. I don't try to take much credit for our games because I really am not responsible for them. I write the stories and the concepts of the games and give them, I guess, that sort of soul. But because we make old school style 8-bit and 16-bit games, the work is really on the designer and the programmer and the artists. And what I do is like almost irrelevant. So I try to always, say that I'm not really a game developer, right? Like I'm a writer of games, and these stories are just made up whatever nonsense out of my head. So but I guess that's everything. But as far as being a publisher, I often think about that, and I've consulted it from time to time, but I've been given the opportunity to fund games in the past. Now that I've gotten older and, Last Stand does really well. Lilymo, I don't take any money from Lilymo, so it wouldn't operate if I did, because we don't make that much money. We don't sell that many copies of our games. We sell, our lowest selling game was like 5,000 units. Our highest selling is like 30,000 or something like that, 40,000, somewhere in there. But a lot of those are even, sold for $2 a piece or whatever. So we're not making a whole lot of money, but I do think I have an eye towards, obviously I've been in this industry a long time, and I think I know what makes games good intuitively, or what makes games fun. And I've also been in situations and with developers, I recently remarked that I'm still in Drinkbox Studios credits for their games because I gave them what they considered essential feedback on the original Guacamelee that made the game like much, much, much better. And that was specifically chastising them and begging them to get the game off of the analog sticks and put it on the D-pad. And they said that was
I thought that was different. Okay.
Yeah. So
I thought that was when you were like, take all the Jew stuff out and go Mexican.
Oh yeah, right. I was like,
You
yeah,
did that-
we don't want any of the Jews stuff.
Right,
Let's make it a little
that's
more,
cool.
we'll give it a little Latin flair.
So
and
it's
they were like,
both
this
of
is
those
wonderful,
things.
wonderful idea.
Yeah.
And the guy that does all that stuff is, I think, Mexican, but like, because the same art style in their other stuff too. So I say that only because I think it's funny. It's like, yeah, that was like, actually they were gonna really launch that game on the analog sticks, and it wouldn't have worked at all, and they needed someone on the outside to tell them that. That's why it's so important to let people play your games, which is, by the way, something we learned ourselves by making our games too hard. And Twin Breaker was the example of where we didn't let anyone play it, and then no one knew how to beat it, which was a problem. So I think I do have an eye to do that sort of stuff and invest in that sort of thing, but I still believe that the risk is too high, because I do believe that there are just too many games. So you're just competing with too many products that could be as good or better. If you don't believe that there are too many games, which is a viable, outlook on the industry, I suppose, then this is the best way to make them, with one person and then some other entity funding it through like a visionary auteur style person, like a Tom Happ with Axiom Verge and so on and so forth. You do get great products like that often. And obviously Stardew Valley is probably the biggest example of that. So I think I could do it. Jaffe, we know you could do it. So,
well, no, I mean, so I could do it, but I wouldn't have seen Animal Well coming. Like what I've played, I own it. I don't own it. I get it on PS Plus, I think, or one of them is, but I played it for about an hour. I like it. It just really, I haven't gotten engaged enough with it to get deep enough to see what the big deal is. Although I'm sure there is a big deal. Whereas if somebody had come to me and said, Jaffe, the two big indie games that dropped last week were Crow Country and Animal Well. I've played them both. Animal Well pissed me off at one point, but I liked it so much I've gone back and I'm almost done with it now. I would have thrown my weight behind Animal Well because my brain can see the value of that. But I could not see, not Animal Well, Crow Country, but I could not see with Animal Well. I still don't know what people are seeing. It's fine. It's beautiful. The audio is great. Have you played it yet, Colin?
No, I have not.
Okay. Which one's free this month on PS Plus? I think
it's Animal Well on PS Plus extra. On PS Plus, like the middle tier.
Right. Okay.
Extra.
And I like it. I think it's great. But it's so far I don't understand. So I would have missed that one. But sure, I think there would be a home for me at a company like that where it's like, hey, Jaffe, we want you to identify this stuff. For me, I think I would always aim more towards commercial. The thing I don't like about, and I love the auteur stuff. I think at this point, if you think you want to make video games, but you're not either interested or smart enough to, and it doesn't require a lot of intelligence to learn something simple like Game Maker, then you don't really want to make video games. But at this point, I would love to see some of those auteur games becoming more, I don't mean commercial in terms of losing their vision, but I'm a kid of the 80s that grew up where we had blockbusters that had heart and soul and they played to an audience. And it seems a lot of indie games these days are just about one arty-farty audience. And it sure would be nice to get indies that embrace the market more because I think that's missing. But I could do it, but I would have missed Animal Well 100%.
I'm the funny thing is that it's like a two-sided coin where it's like I'm mega confident in my taste in games. How it would work out? I mean, anyone's guess.
No one knows. I mean, that's the thing. You just don't know. You don't know. All right, Jarrett. Thanks, buddy.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
All right, here's what we're gonna do, fellas. We got one more final call, and then we're gonna do the super chats, and we're gonna wrap it up. Don't forget, tomorrow, if you were a member, is lunch with Jaffe. I'll be playing Crypt Master later today. I'll tell you about it if you're interested. Swing on by. And then I think I'm coming on Constellation later this month.
Yeah, you are. I think next week, something like that. I saw it on the schedule.
Topic, man. Are you still? People get mad at me because I always call it constellations, but I get it's constellation because it's like the four people make up a specific thing. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that was the idea, but it doesn't matter. I don't care.
I know. How's that show doing? I love that show. Does it do well, or does it depend on the topics?
It does well. I think topics. There's a vacillation in topics, but it has a steady audience. People really seem to enjoy it, and I think it's more important to give people in our circle like a way to air things that otherwise don't make much sense in their respective shows. So it seems like the people that do it, which we have a large group now that we pull from, like to do it, and I appreciate that. And it seems like the audience likes it too. But I understand that it's going to be hit or miss for people depending on what we talk about, the personalities involved, and so on. So,
do you guys have a show that is? We all know Sacred's the flagship, the anchor store, but does that also get the longest duration of listening time, or is there another show that may not be as big as Sacred but people listen longer?
No, it's funny, man. Like we find that adjusted for time, so
right,
Knockback's a little shorter, Sacred Symbols is a little longer. That all the shows are listened to pretty much the same. And this is I was thinking about this earlier, which was what's interesting is that like there's a difference between the mean and like, you know, the median, the mean, the average, and all these different things. And like, there are so many people that click in and listen for 5 seconds, right? And leave or whatever, that it's really difficult to really know what to make out of even view time or watch time. And so I think our view time is like under an hour per episode. It's like 45 or 46 minutes, which is fine.
Pretty fucking good though. Yeah.
Yeah. Our content's really long though, you know, so, but yeah, we want to just, consistency is the key. We just want to be there for when people want to listen to it. I look at it as ephemera. I keep telling audiences this, like, you shouldn't feel like you need to listen to everything. It's just always going to be there when you're ready. And it's always going to be new. There's always a new episode, you know? So
yeah, I hate that you guys are so good at that. I can't compete with that. You guys are always fucking on time.
It's essential. That's why I tell people like it's probably the most essential thing. You know?
And I'm just kind of like, oh, it's Tuesday. Do I want to stream? Oh, look, a bird. That's me. Well, anyway, okay. Colin, I'm going to give you a choice here, buddy. This is P Turtle. Yes or no? Do you have the energy to put up with this guy?
Is this the guy from last time?
Yep.
Okay,
yes
yeah, that's fine. If you want to do, it's your show.
You. He's not here to talk to me. He's here to talk.
Okay,
to you.
yeah, let's have him. Yeah, let's do it.
P Turtle. God forbid, God help us all. You were on with Colin Moriarty. Go. P Turtle. Jesus Christ.
I'm here, baby.
All right, take the audio down a notch. Talk to Colin. Go.
How do I take the audio down a notch?
Just don't yell.
Oh, I'm black. I can't help it.
You told us you weren't black.
Yeah, it depends on the day.
Really? Okay, keep going. You're on with Colin. Go.
Colin, let me ask you, man.
Sure.
I haven't really watched your show much, but you've been a part of like the gaming industry as far as I've been aware of it.
Baby, it's too fucking loud. Stop shouting because I'm going to have to cut you off. It's loud. It's killing people.
Well, I don't know what to do. This is just who I am.
Here's how you do it. Colin, you've been a part, or Colin, you've been a part. See how I took the volume down?
I'm gonna try, baby. I'm gonna try.
All right, go.
So anyway, I believe both of you guys are gaming plants. Why I say this is because both of you guys have had this big discussion about gaming for over 2 hours, and you guys haven't talked about the most important part of why gaming is dying. And it is dying. It is soulless. DEI, ESG. How did you guys, who are important and have microphones, allow all these crazy liberal weirdos to hijack the gaming industry and wait and take so long to even discuss it? This has been a thing that's been ruining gaming for like, 10 years now? Maybe more? And you guys barely discuss it. Colin, I know you're probably woke, but at the end of the day, my friend, you know what we want from our games. We want games for men. We want sexiness. We want big titties. We want all that. We don't want a Goodbye Volcano High. We don't want Dream Daddy. We don't want, what is it? What game do you think is amazing? The Last of Us 2, you think is like one of the greatest games ever made?
I love that game. It's great.
Not you, Jaffe. You like Suicide Squad.
I did.
Yeah. But Colin, you like The Last of Us 2 and think it's one of the greatest games ever made? How?
Yes. How?
That story is so ridiculous and so terrible compared to the first game. And it just makes me think you guys have to be industry plants. And I say this as somebody that likes you guys. Jaffe's my best friend. I'm probably his best friend. But
I thought your 16-year-old girlfriend was your best friend.
Oh, why do you guys keep going on her? She was 17,
she's
but she's
16, you fucking weirdo.
No, she's 17. She was 17 and she's 18 now. Colin, this is what I'm talking about. This is plant behavior. They try to ruin guys like me and they spread false lies. So that,
all right, Pete Turtle, do you actually have anything to ask Colin?
Oh, no, wait. In all seriousness, I would like him to answer that because that is the main problem with gaming. And I would like to know if he agrees with it.
Did you say I was woke?
Yeah, 100%.
I just don't even know how to answer that.
I'm
like probably one of the most prominent anti-woke people in the games industry and have been for a really, 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 really long time. And you should go read my IGN editorials from when I still worked there.
But can I explain why I believe that?
Sure, if you
briefly.
want.
Okay, briefly. First of all, you came from Kind of Funny Games. There's no way you can be
co-founded it.
Right. You can never, there's no way you could be based and be best friends with Greg Miller. That's the first thing. Second thing is, I've seen you have like Melanie Mack on and agree with certain things she said. And then I've seen you, berate your audience because you felt they've attacked trans people. And you said, trans people exist. We need to get over this. You're best friends with Neil Druckmann. I won't say you're ultra woke, but by my standards, you're woke. And
trans people do exist, though, right? Like whether or not we we want to agree on, is it like what if some people think it's a mental illness, some people think it's an expression, an outpouring of expression, whatever. They do exist, don't they? I mean, that's just reality.
No, they exist, but when it comes to gaming, why would we cater to a vast minority? And as we know, it's destroying gaming, right? Like the market is speaking, but it's because they can take the hit because of all these private equity firms and these investment firms, and it just seems like the industry.
You don't have any facts, and I'm bored of this conversation.
Oh my God, saving Colin again! Of course. Why do you baby him?
Look, I'm not. Listen. Here's the deal,
Colin. I like you, by the way. This is not. I would just like your real answer.
I appreciate that, but what I'll say real quick, Jaffe, is I just think that you have to be so divorced from my history. Like, I'm not saying you have to know who I am or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm just flabbergasted that the Republican in the games industry for many, years who made his name by writing conservative style op-eds at IGN about all of these things 12 or 14 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then being told that I'm not, like, you guys are like catching up to a culture war that has been brewing long before you were ever aware of it in some sense.
No, I was aware of it my whole life.
But you were clearly weren't in this space where I was a major frontline player in that long before Gamergate, long before any of those things.
I believe you're a conservative if we compare you to Adam Sessler, if we compare you to a Greg Miller. But when it comes to the regular world, I think you're pretty left. Even though you might, maybe you're right on certain policies, but not like social policies. I don't believe you're that right.
Well, I think that would be into the eye of the beholder, but I just don't understand. And I also just don't really believe that there's two things. I don't believe that the problem with DEI in the industry is what it's really made out to be in some sense. But the bigger thing is that the people that are arguing for the other side clearly are not the people that are equipped to be talking about it, which is why I just don't really participate.
Oh, so you think I'm dumb because I'm black? Go ahead.
I think you're dumb because you're dumb. However, what I will tell you is that for you to make a statement, your whole argument is built on this foundation that games are worse than they've ever been.
They are.
Okay. But you have absolutely zero evidence to back that up.
Are you kidding me? Look at Microsoft. Look at Microsoft right now. Are their games better than they used to be?
Okay,
so what you're saying
is because you can point to a single situation where a company that you used to like you don't like anymore. That means games are worse.
You don't like them anymore. Colin doesn't like them. Nobody likes them. They're terrible.
But that sounds like a Microsoft problem. That doesn't sound like a game industry problem.
Listen, I just heard you talking about Sony and how you're not liking what they're doing, and things are boring on their side too.
Yeah, but I'm always going on about this is the best time to play games ever. There's so much
because you're talking about these weirdo indie games. We're talking about games made by devs we like
now called Crow Country, where you're going around dealing with fucking people that are zombies and heads getting chopped off, and you're this girl who does chopping heads. I don't fucking know, but it's not a woke game, you motherfucker.
Listen, I'm gonna go. I just want Colin to. Well, wait, can I say this? Colin, can you just answer about the DEI thing? Do you think it's important? Do you think that this is something that is bad for gaming and that this needs to be talked about more?
Thank you, Turtle. All right. DEI. There's even some people in the chat that are like, you guys aren't talking about DEI in gaming. What is there to talk about? What do you think is happening with that at this point?
Yeah, first of all, I do think that there is a problem there. I mean, this is why it's so, I don't know, like I'm not even, it's like I'm not even equipped to answer from his perspective because I just assume people come in knowing at least some part of how I feel about things. So it's almost like I'm going back to the foundational elements of everything I've already said, which is, you know, many, many, many times over, which is this idea that, you know, we shouldn't be judging people based on race at all, that we shouldn't be making allowances for anyone other than in a totally egalitarian way where everyone is treated exactly the same. So DEI is antithetical to this idea, and I'm against it. And I'm thrilled to see it dismantled in all of these different universities around the country and all of the rest, and that money being redirected in other ways. But the problem with the games industry crossover with DEI is, first of all, I'm not interested in infringing on people's like right to voluntarily associate with each other. If a company wants to hire a DEI consultancy, you're allowed to talk about it and even be upset about it. But the only way to really make them feel it is in the wallet. Like talking about it is almost like is moot. You really have to execute on the market. And the bigger part, and I wasn't talking about him necessarily. I don't know this person. He obviously doesn't know me, but the representatives of this movement are not good representatives. Like
you mean the representatives of the pro DEI movement?
No, I'm sorry. Both sides, I guess, but I'm actually speaking about the anti-DEI people. Right. Like, I just don't think that there are better messengers for this than the people I'm seeing kind of crop up to talk about it. And I think it's injuring the ability of taking it more seriously. So, because this guy's kind of all over the map where he's talking about like, well, the Last of Us Part 2, everyone has a problem with that because of the lesbian relationship. And I don't want to spoil it for people if people want to play it, but, and all of the rest and Abby and whatever the case might be, but they're kind of conflating it. It's actually interesting. It's what the Kanzara Zhao game that you were bringing up earlier. Mm-hmm. Like people are like, this game is woke. And I'm like, why? What's woke about it?
Right.
Like, because it's about black people. Like, is that because that's kind of the argument some people are making. And those are the kinds of messengers you want to send forward to have a very important discussion. I just think there's a relative ill-equipped kind of front line right now. And it's insane that people are going to lecture me about it when I was saying a lot of shit about a lot of things long before any of these people were involved in this, and took a lot of bruises and became a very unpopular figure within games journalist circles because of those stances, but made a name for myself at IGN because of those opinions. So this is like totally divorced from reality, but
yeah, but you have to understand, Pete Turtle eats cereal with milk with his hands. So it's not like you're talking about, you know, an intellectual giant.
So, well, I don't know. I don't want to judge him. I don't know one way or the other.
Oh, you're
just
welcome
don't tell my wife that I'm racist, please.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no kidding. The only thing I will add to that, though, is I think dismantling DEI would be great if it means that we could also dismantle the reason that we needed DEI in the first place. I mean, if people want to dismantle it, that's fine. But are they also going to dismantle the aspects of corporate culture that created the rise for it to begin with? Because if not, isn't that a problem?
Sure. And this is the thing. This is why you need smart people. I'm not saying it's going to be me. It's got to be someone, though, right? You have a problem with ESG and money being loaned from companies based on things. This should be in publicly traded the books. Go into the financials.
It is, isn't it?
Right. I mean, it definitely is.
Yeah.
Go and extract it. Show the projects, right? And point the lines and make a fucking Charlie Day conspiracy image, right? Like, do the legwork instead of just using and pontificating about all of these different things that mean nothing until you have, like, point to the example, point to how it went down and where things went wrong. And you're kind of reflecting on projects without having the full knowledge of it. I'm not a fan of that's the funny thing is I remember you and I were making fun of the Sweet Baby Inc. clearly with the Gotham Knight, or not Gotham Knights, the other game,
Suicide Squad,
where it's like everybody's welcome with like the flag with every fucking color. It's like, what is this shit?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I had a whole conversation about what did I say? Stop shoving the rainbow flag down my throat all the time. I'm sick of seeing it. You know,
I'm not sick of seeing it. I'm sick of it being just poorly integrated. Like, I don't have a problem flying around or swinging around as Miles Morales and seeing a rainbow flag in parts of New York. That's just normal. But going into the Hall of Justice, it's like, really, are you guys into diversity? You know what you have? You have an Amazon, a Martian, a Krypton. I know you guys are okay with diversity. We don't need that in there, but it is what it is. But I'm
it's just interesting. I don't think that like this journey against DEI is a bad thing. I think it's actually progressive in some sense towards egalitarianism. I also don't think that it's not a problem in the games industry. Certainly it's cropping up, and certainly the people that make games don't reflect the audience that consumes them. I mean, there's just no doubt about that. Like there's just no doubt about that. And that's a similar thing to what's happened in academia and in journalism and a bunch of other places too. But I just think you need to have better messengers with a real message. Like come equipped with like, so in 2022, Electronic Arts got this much money because they said this thing. And this went into this project. Yeah. This is the way this project reflected that. Like, that's compelling. And I do believe, by the way, that does happen. I'm looking
for that data. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but that happens with everything. Everything is, hey, I'll take your money. I'll give you money if you do X. Okay, I'm willing to do X. And I'd love to see which games that they took DEI money for. And let's look at the games. Was it FIFA? Was it? I mean, what game could EA possibly have that people would say is problematically woke? EA, you know, they're lucky for their games to communicate, you know, how to play the goddamn thing.
So like to me, it's another issue in the social war, which is fine, the culture war, which I'm totally down with. And I think it's an important.
I'm sorry, Colin. 1 second.
Yeah. Okay. Please hold. What do you think he's saying right now? Looks like he's scolding someone. He was pointing like this. He's like, okay, welcome back.
My kid's going to see the Apes movie, so.
Oh, okay, cool.
I heard it's good. But yeah, no, I think look at this guy on screen. He says ESG and DEI is a cure for a problem that didn't exist. I mean, I mean, come on now. That's a ridiculous concept. I mean, Colin, you agree with that, right? Of course there's a problem.
Yeah, you and I have had that conversation that I believe affirmative action actually was necessary. The question is it still necessary? And I would say no. And I think that's where the DEI argument probably should be rooted in is like, yeah, actually having like exposing people to, it was important that Roadblock was black in G.I. Joe, right? It was important that like Scarlet was a woman. Like these things were probably a little more relevant during that time. And so maybe we went a little bit out of our way and we tried to underline things and maybe we don't need to do that anymore. I think that's like that's what seems so regressive about DEI to me is that like it allows for no adjustment as if nothing changed. Right. And you can see that, dude, the Gallup polling about race relations speaks for itself. Like race relations in the Americas were the best at the turn of the century. And everyone agreed. That like they poll everyone and they show it and you can just see it going down. And it happened because the narrative that things weren't as they seemed, like as if people's realities weren't, you know, improving.
As a libertarian, for the most part, my guess would be you would be like the very nature that we know what caused this and we know how to fix some of this in terms of like lack of regulation with cable news or things that call themselves news and the media, you know, making money by pushing certain agendas that we know and social media that are bad for us as a country. But the only way to prevent that, I imagine, other than we just evolve and stop being greedy assholes, is to regulate it. But the minute we start to regulate it, we get a lot of people saying that's anti-American, right? So, I mean, is the answer, yeah, but the American experiment is worth it even if it falls apart in 50 years? Or do you think it's time to sort of step in and say, the way we have it now isn't working and we're all being played by people with this money and it's causing our lives to be worse?
I do think that there's probably a French Revolution-like outcome, the worst that it gets, which is avoidable if adjustments occur beforehand. But I think capitalism is permanent in the sense that I don't think it just always exists without some sort of tension and pull and push and pull that keeps it in place.
Right.
And I think that we've learned that you and I agree on this 100%. And I consider myself a conservative, but I feel like there's people with just too much money and that people should have never been even allowed to accumulate that much money. And you simply can't have dozens of people with as much money as like the rest of everyone. Like that just leads to bad outcomes. I say that as someone who like I'm doing very well for myself. I'm not trying to be an asshole, right? I just wonder like what's enough for people? Like what is enough? And you and I have had this conversation many times. Like I just think there's such a thing as enough. So when you have that much power and then you can manipulate things, and then this is what people talk about with like George Soros DAs and stuff like that. There is some resonance to it. It's like, yes, you have so much money that you literally can manipulate all sorts of weird shit. And it sucks, that's the way it is.
And they, to the point that they manipulate our inability to change it through voting. I mean, they own the lobbyists own the government. So it's never going away unless we make it go away. But okay.
For me, I just feel like the system is ripe for either like some sort of revolution or some sort of like major adjustment about the way things are done. And I don't like the way, I think things are going in a very bad direction. Like I think that the more people don't have, the worse it gets.
It is. I don't mean, and I really try to have an awareness of not being one of those old guys that looks back, and goes, "Oh, it was better in my time." Because again, as I've said before on your show, if you were white and straight, it was probably easier growing up in the '80s than for me than other people. But that said, though, whether it's the shootings or the terrorism, and it's just. Kids, it's not okay for kids to grow up in this kind of environment. And I know people in Palestine are like, yeah, you think? I get it. I know it's not I understand the context, but it's so unfair to people that are suffering under this, which is more and more people every year as these people get more power and more control over our culture and our media. And it's just, I don't know what's got to change, but it's a real shitty fucking, I don't know. I get bummed when I look at my kids and I go, this was their childhood. Even though they had a good childhood, I'm like, it's not the same. And it'll never be the same, but it's just not as pleasant. People are, I don't know what I'm saying. Am I rambling?
No, I totally understand exactly what you're saying. And I think that there is, you ask like what has to change. And it's like, it's so bad to me that like everything has to change. Like that, like from, so like I couldn't even imagine what doesn't need to change at this point, and that's a pretty tenuous situation.
Let me ask you this: it's none of my business, and I'm not asking because I'm nosy, but if you guys were ever considering having the baby spawn, how much of this would factor in?
I think it's somewhat relevant. I mean, it's funny because we are investigating that like right now. Like Mike is like reading books and
the penis goes in the vagina.
Yeah, right. Like we have to, I've never had sex, so I have to figure out exactly.
No, I'm just saying some people, that's all you need to know. It'll work. Anyway, continue.
But yeah, Mike is actually funny. Like she's really been studying lately. Like what does it look like? Because she wants to make like a very objective choice, which I totally appreciate. Like and there's this really great book that Michael, what was that book you read? The Baby Decision, it's called. If anyone's interested, and it basically asks you like a series of objective questions or gives you scenarios. And says, and basically makes it so that it's neither like the end of the world or the best thing that's ever happened, but actually something that just goes and your life goes forward and you make adjustments to it. So we want to be very deliberate with it. Right. And that certainly has come up. I have said that, like, do you really like, is it relevant that do you want to bring kids into this world? But then I think about like, I actually had a conversation with my aunts like a couple months ago where I was like, I feel almost, it's anti-natalist in some way to be like, no, like you're supposed to, like, that's the least you can do, isn't it? Is to like procreate.
Yeah, but you could also argue, you bring somebody into this awful environment, and it's like, welcome to the hellscape we've created for you. Have fun. I'm out.
Right. But the first thing I have to learn about is how to have sex.
No, it's really easy. You just put it in there. I mean, you should move back and forth to get, it doesn't matter, Colin. I'll send you a video.
Please.
All right, fellas, I'm going to get some super chats and we're going to wrap it up. But I appreciate all the comments, all the members, and all the ducats. Thank you, guys. We got Zanarkand is a new member. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Welcome. Big Afro Man says, surprisingly, Greg Miller actually acknowledged Colin when PS I Love You ended. I'm sure he did. I think one day these guys are going to be back to being buddies and spooning and all that stuff.
I doubt that, but that's not on me anymore.
I know it's not on you.
I've let that go.
But I know you have, and I know it must be annoying people bring it up, but it's such a good story. It's a horrible story for you to live it, but it's such a dramatic thing that happened, as I've said before. But I don't know. One day maybe he'll call you and he's like, "Oh my God, dude."
Yeah, I don't know.
This is one of the 12 steps. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I don't fucking know.
Yeah, I don't know. Knowing him as well as I did, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he's still the same person as I'm never going to hear from him again.
You don't think having a kid
I don't think so.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
He's good at that, actually.
What's the matter, buddy? Go to therapy. Is he in therapy? You can't tell me. It's not my business. Greg, go to therapy if you're not in therapy, buddy. Come on now. Find your soul. Find your spirit. You're old enough. You got a boy. Raise the child right. Now, Miggy, thank you for the super chat. He says, $5 for Papa Jaffe. Thank you, Miggy. I appreciate that. Maxwell Cuevo says, the fact that we now have big companies like Apple and Disney bundling their subservices with rivals like Max and Netflix indicates subservices do not work, or at least they're not going to be the main business model. Here's the problem I have, Maxwell, and thank you for the very generous super chat. You don't have all the data because, yes, you are absolutely right that there was an announcement that Disney, which already owns Hulu, is now going to offer a subscription service that bundles Max, which is a competing company. But Netflix, so you can argue that right now, those particular services need a little bit of help. Netflix just announced record profits in April. So this narrative that they're all floundering and none of them are working is simply not true. There's nothing inherently problematic about a subscription service any more than there's something inherently problematic about subscribing to a magazine. It's just, is the content good enough to merit the happiness of enough customers that it becomes profitable? I think Shudder is doing really well because Shudder speaks specifically to the horror audience. I'll tell you, if I could get a company to say, I don't want to make video games anymore, but if somebody were to come to me and say, let's do something like a streaming service, like a video game streaming service just for indie horror, and you can have a couple of games a year that are exclusive, I wouldn't only love to work there, but I would just love to consume it. I think there are wonderful subservices out there, and that would be one of them. But I don't agree with you, Maxwell. I don't know, Colin, do you agree or not on this whole thing?
I just find it interesting. To survive, the non-dominant streaming services are going to need to go more towards a cable-like presentation.
Right.
And what's interesting is that the salvation of all of these different services is just to not literally merge, but join some sort of union where you would just get them all for $100, and then that would be called cable.
It would be, but there is a big difference, though. I get that argument, and I think it's clever and it's funny, but the big differentiator though is the on-demand aspect. I mean, yes, cable came to you as a package, but I think the real thing is that now that you watch what you want, when you want, how you want, that's where you want. I mean, that has been transformative regardless of how you pay for it. But yeah, for sure, it is weird to suddenly see Disney, Max, and Hulu together, and you're like, didn't I just cancel this?
Yeah, it is. You're right though. We are getting back a much better service now. If we were to go down that road, I have cable just for live sports because we watch football and hockey, and hockey's almost over, so we can probably even cancel it for a few months. But I have noticed, you get your Comcast email every month, and I'm like, damn, we're paying how much for this shit?
You can't get that on live Hulu. I get live TV, but I get it on Hulu, and I see the
NFL is very persnickety, especially with where you can watch it. So I have Sunday Ticket through YouTube, which is a ridiculous service. It's awesome, but it's really expensive. And then, you have your Thursday night games only on the NFL Network, and you have a Peacock game, and you have a fucking NBC game, and you have it's they really actually, I read a story just a couple of days ago where they have it so that you need 12 different things next year or something to be able to see everything.
I know you're doing well. You don't need any more money, but would you like some more money?
I would love more money.
Here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
My understanding, and maybe this has already started or it's about to start, is that Amazon and Twitch is going to now allow you to stream some of the NFL games, broadcast them. In other words, because I think they have some deal with whoever's.
Yeah, didn't you and I talk about how good of an idea that would have been if you could do your own commentary?
God, man, you having just once a week or twice a week where you call a game on your own and you're talking about it and shit, people would eat that shit up, man. Go fucking make some more ducats, baby. Give Lily Mo a AAA budget for once. Come on,
dude. For me, it's interesting because all these services have choices to make about their ubiquity in people's lives as they come to cost more money, as people realize the kind of chip damage it does on their bank accounts. I mean, you're right. Like, we make enough money where it doesn't matter. We can have all these subscriptions. You know that I don't have them all out of principles. Like, I'm not doing it. This is the same reason we talked about how I don't buy beer at a hockey game. It's like, I'm not doing it. You know, like, just on principle. For me, the salvation for our Patreon and why I think it does so well is that, like, the price just doesn't go up. It's such an irrelevant amount of money for people. $5 a month is the core cost of it, and you can pay a little more if you want. It's like, people are just like, oh, that's fine. Like, it's, but like, when it starts getting into like 12, 15, 17, then people start noticing. That's why it's essential to spread the field as much as possible. And I totally get it, but these guys are going to have to make a choice at some point. Netflix is doing very well. Others are going to have a choice about budgets and the nexus of how much money they're spending on this content and letting content churn and giving it a chance.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree. I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. There was that. Did you watch the show? What is that? Oh, Barry. Do you watch that show, Barry, on HBO?
I watched the first episode and everybody raves about it. I just it didn't get its hooks in me, but maybe I'll go back if I'm looking for something. But no, I know what it is though. The Henry Winkler and the guy from SNL, this Hitman or something.
Yeah, he's like it's interesting. I only ask if you haven't seen it. It doesn't matter. There's a metaphor in it though, like in the last season about. Like, it's not a spoiler, basically. Like, someone he knows, because he's an actor and they're all actors, like someone he knows puts a show on a streaming service that is canceled before it even streams because the AI predicts that it's going to fail or whatever.
Right.
And I'm like, I know that you were talking about the data before, that these guys are all data driven, and I wish they get a little bit more. It's like how, you know, I love the NFL, right? We brought it up several times. Everyone gets to spend the same amount of money. The skilled people are the ones that the GMs, like, that make the teams and manufacture these rosters, are the ones that, like, know how to spend money better.
Wait a minute.
They make more money.
I know nothing about this. You're telling me that every NFL team, from the Kansas City Chiefs to the worst of the Jets, I guess, right? The worst in the league, they all are legally not legally, but they are bound by the NFL rules that you can only spend X number of dollars a year.
Yeah, it's called the salary cap. So, like, all their salaries have to fit under this number, which is like 200.
Kansas City doesn't spend more on all their athletes than the Jets. It's just how they spend it.
Right. And there's a salary floor too. So, like, if all the NFL teams are lucrative, but if you wanted to, like, cut corners, you still couldn't really do it. You know, like,
interesting. I had no idea.
In fact, like, it's more common in the NHL. But it happens in other leagues too, where teams that don't want to spend as much money will or haven't spent enough money to get above the salary floor will buy contracts from other teams of players they don't want, and then just, like, sit them.
So then what is the motivation for a team to do well if you're not going to get any more money than the bottom team next season? Like, if you're the Kansas City Chiefs and you're selling more tickets, who gets that? The owner still makes a profit.
They make a profit on their teams. Like, being good is profitable, but there is a profit share between everyone too. That's how everyone, and I think a third of the money is just profit shared. And there are teams in small markets and teams in big markets and teams that are successful traditionally and teams that are very unsuccessful traditionally. But yeah, they're all bound by the same rules of having to spend a certain amount of money and can't go and not being able to go above a certain amount. And so it's about how you spend it. And that's
go ahead.
I was just saying that's the best reference I can think of and knowing that now, you probably see the reference I'm making about, like, it's the management of the money and, like, what you get out of it, because everyone kind of is bound by the same rules of you can really only charge so much. You have access on these machines. You're competing with these people. So you have to make the best of it. And it's going to be about the companies with the best talent. Netflix seems to have
educating for me. I didn't know that. I appreciate that. Would you be surprised to learn? I think I heard Bill Burr, and he was doing a bit. But would you be surprised to learn that one of the major sports leagues, baseball, hockey, golf, football, whatever, was scripted? Like, in terms of the outcomes, like, I mean, I know that would just roil the whole fucking thing. But is that an impossible thing to be occurring for the most part, or do you think that that conspiracy has some weight?
I think it has. It's funny, man. Like, I was, first of all, I think the easiest sport. Well, you can point shave. Do you know what that means? Like,
well, in terms of gambling, like,
you. So if you're betting against the spread, you could still win while shaving the points. Like, this was something that was generated and was like a big conspiracy with, I think, the mob and, like, college basketball, like, in the 50s.
Right. I had an agent in college for my TV shows that was murdered because he was acquitted, but he got murdered by the mob because he was threatening college students to throw games and stuff because he was working for the mob. It was great.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, and they did, like, there are entire seasons of college basketball that were vacated basically because of like that kind of level of like point shaving cheating and like how many people were in on it. So I only bring that up because I think there are, out of the 4 major sports in the United States, I think hockey and football would be really hard to do that with. Hockey, because it's too fluid, and I know hockey very intimately. It's the sport I played my entire childhood and teen years, and I love it.
So like even if you wanted to throw it, it would be hard to do consistently.
Right, like I wouldn't know how you would really do it. And football, it would be too obvious. Like it would, because it's a turn-based game. If you're blowing coverages and shit like that, and like it's eventually going to become obvious that you're doing it on purpose. But it's so funny you brought this up because I saw baseball. We know that people cheat in all the time. The Astros got in trouble for cheating a couple of years ago, right? Do you know anything about that? Like banging.
I thought you were going to bring up the shoeless Joe thing. I knew.
Oh
that,
no, newer things than that. But I think it was the Astros that were accused and I think found that they were basically using like a garbage can in their dugout and hitting it and stealing signals by signaling like what they think. I think the pitcher was doing to the batter. So they had stolen the catcher's signals, I guess.
Well, wait, can't you do that if you're a coach? I mean, if
you can do it. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily illegal. I think it's the systemic way in which they were doing it. Like it's like filming a practice or something. Like you just don't do it that way.
Okay.
But it's the same reason why, like in football, like you put your thing over your mouth so no one can read your lips and all that. Basketball. So this is the video where I was like, oh, that's weird. Is that there is this theory that is fairly compelling. I suggest you go look into it, that there are magnets in the ball and on the backboard, and that the ball behaves specifically in NBA games in very weird ways. And I saw this video about it, and I'm like, holy shit.
Okay, I'm watching
the ball is doing things that, like, the ball will sit on top, like the ball will bounce up and sit on top of, sometimes it goes over the backboard, but it'll just sit on top of it as if it's being just drawn down. Or it'll sit like on the rim where the rim meets the backboard. And it's like the ball behaves in weird ways. And people are like, dude, it's entirely possible that they're like totally controlling the NBA.
So
but
easy.
Like
you could just grab the ball and run away and cut it open real quick, right? I mean, you'd get thrown out, but you could solve the conspiracy.
Yeah, you could. I mean, that's why
it's at Last Stand, because you can afford to do it. I'm not that big yet, but you guys should hire a guy to do shit like that and film it. I would watch the fuck out of that, Colin. Send Dustin out. Send Dustin out with a knife to an NBA game and tell him to steal a goddamn ball. Let's see what happens.
Dude, you got to see. Like, I never thought about it before because I love basketball.
That's not a joke. Send that man out. You won't do it, will you?
No, I'm not going to do it. It doesn't seem like a wise investment for me. But it's funny, man. Like, I especially love playing basketball. I've always loved playing it, and it's funny. Like, you do know how the ball behaves after a while, like about the way it will hit, and especially like your specific backboard and your rim and all of that. And I got to find this video and send it to you. I was like, holy shit. Like, it was a compilation of all these different things. And I'm like, no, the ball couldn't do that. Like, how is it doing that?
So is there somebody turning it on and off as needed? Or
I guess that's the theory. I don't really think that this is happening specifically because I think any conspiracy requires too many.
Though the money people make in this world. I mean, the fact, let me ask you're not living under an assumption that the 2 Boeing whistleblowers died without.
Oh no, they were killed for sure.
Right. So I mean, if they're going to do it, we live in a world where we get shown every day that the powers that be will do whatever. There is no sacred cow they won't slaughter.
It's true.
In order to bring the ducats in, and in that wouldn't surprise me at all. It probably makes a lot of sense. Oh shit, we need a Michael Jordan. We'll make a Michael Jordan.
It's funny, man. Like, I'm not much of a believer in conspiracies specifically because I think it's very difficult to stay quiet. That's what I think is so interesting about the UFO conspiracy and how that does seem to be true in some sense and how people really have stayed quiet but actually have been loud and marginalized. The thing with the NBA cheating was I had never even considered how overt it can be and how they were showing how the ball just never reacts like this in any other setting but an NBA game. So it's not like something endemic to basketball. It's like only in an NBA game will a ball do this, right?
And has the NBA ever spoken on this, or they won't even give it?
I don't know. I don't know enough about it.
I'm putting this on the next I Love the Weird episode. That's amazing.
Yeah, dude. I'll
stuff
find
is heating up again. By the way, I don't know if you saw that. There's a couple of documents that have just come out from Congress about various senators that have demanded certain things, and it's once again pointing towards this David Grash guy being accurate in everything he's saying.
And there's this idea, I think it was on Tucker Carlson interviewed someone, was talking about it, where it was like, oh, maybe it was Eric Weinstein or something, where it was like, there's this idea that it's spiritual. Like there's this idea that the people,
or not, but dimensional. You mean?
Yeah, dimensional. Let's say, multi-dimensional, where it's not about space and aliens. It's about time and place. You know, and I'm like, that's insane. And that's like that. Yeah, it's like that's and I think David Grush was saying like these people have died investigating this stuff and like in their interactions with it or whatever, and it's fucking, and that a lot of it might be in the oceans, you know, or seems to clearly be hidden in the oceans, which is so extraordinary. I love it, and I still can't believe that people are like just going about their daily business. So I got to go get gas at 7-Eleven and go to Publix and go food shopping, and it's like, dude, we are
so fucking cattle.
I know, it's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy to me. Like
I love that stuff.
If people felt the way I felt when those revelations were first coming out, it would have been like a earth-shattering moment.
I was like,
oh my God.
I was the same. I was like, what are you talking about? There's going to be weather this week. Who gives a shit? It's stunning. Listen to this. Calpy, thank you, buddy. He says, he's been around for 50 months. He says, hey, can we talk about real gaming companies like Nintendo who are dominating Sony and Microsoft? You're not going to get me on the Nintendo hook. I love Nintendo. I'm reading a book right now called The Wisdom of Iwata, which is so good, and it probably romanticizes this guy way more than he should be. But I'm a huge fucking fan of Nintendo, and I think they're doing great. Although their president came out recently, not Bowser, but the one in Japan, and said, look, our budgets are going up too. And it's getting harder to make games, and they're taking longer, and they're better equipped and positioned than anyone else to sort of not have to chase the tech. But they're still, you know, everyone's going to be suffering for it as production value demands continue to rise. What do you think, Colin, about Nintendo?
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo are the best to have ever done it, but let's not overblow it. Like we were saying, either Sony makes 3 times more money on PlayStation than Nintendo makes on Switch, and the revenues speak for themselves, right?
So you think this guy's wrong where he says they're dominating Sony and Microsoft? That's not accurate.
It's not accurate at all. I mean,
Switch is number 2.
I think Switch 2 is going to be huge.
No. Switch is number 2 in the sales.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, Switch is number 2 in the sale. Yeah, no, it's doing great. I mean, it's doing amazing. But I'm saying from pure revenue, acting like it's this huge force. They're a first-party force. They do really, really well with their own games. They sell extraordinary numbers. I don't know if you saw the updated numbers they released a couple weeks ago, where they have games they're selling like 30, 35, 40, 45 million. It's like, what?
Yeah, Mario Kart 8, best-selling game ever. They did.
It's incredible. And so I think that they deserve a lot of credit there, but it's also true that their net revenue, or their gross revenue is $10 billion, and PlayStation's gross revenue is $30 billion. So, and it's interesting because we now have the new numbers where even Microsoft with Activision is still $5 billion behind PlayStation. So make no mistake, it's a substantial gap between them as far as that, but there's no doubt from a hardware perspective, like churning your hardware, from a first party perspective, they're doing a great job. But as far as services, third party games and stuff, that's why it was so funny when that guy was like, third party games don't move the needle. Like Sony would cease to exist without third party games, and Nintendo would probably be fairly okay.
There's so much misinformation out there when it comes to this. It drives me batshit because you can't correct everybody. And then there are narratives that take hold, and it's like, I mean, you deal with it all the time with your reputation, I'm sure, with like, oh, Colin doesn't like women. He was mean to women. It's what are you talking about? Anyway, all right. Good.
And
Rich
he's racist.
Games, and he's racist, of course. And he's in the Klan. I heard you were in the Klan. Oh, by the way, do you have your hood? I've always wanted to see a real hood.
Yeah, I have I'm an officer, so I have like one of the red ones instead of. Oh my
God, it's like Deadpool. Goodrich Games, designer of Twisted Metal, Small Bra, Vigilante 8, Star Wars, Car Combat, a bunch of other things, says an interesting time for the game biz. You goddamn right, Goodrich. Good to see you, buddy. Machine XP, thank you, buddy. He says, Colin, do you think that you are underselling how huge Call of Duty marketing has been for Sony for a decade?
No, I think it is big, and I think that also it was very relevant the way they were with Xbox during a very powerful position in the Xbox 360 history too, where those two things were married together. And Microsoft used to open their press conferences at E3 with Call of Duty. Mm-hmm. I think it matters a great deal, but I also just don't know that I don't know that that's going to move the needle more than some of the other partners that they're going to certainly ramble up in the next year or so, right? You imagine there's going to be a Grand Theft Auto bundle and all these other things that are going to sell amazing amount of units. My suspicion is that they're going to be very bullish about that. If I were, by the way, with Rockstar, I just would let both of them do bundles and have at it.
Well, I heard yesterday Rockstar said that Xbox and Xbox and PlayStation are their platforms. They haven't even said it's going to be on PC. I have a hard time believing it's not.
Eventually, and they don't typically come immediately, though, right? It's a big deal. Like Red Dead is coming to PC, right? And that's a big deal.
The first one, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is weird. So I guess maybe then, this is going to be a good reason people are going to want. That's probably why I'll buy a Pro, because I want to play GTA 6 at its best for about 5 hours and then never go back to it. Mickey11, thank you, buddy. He says, sadly, Ninja Theory will be closed within the year. Oh, I think that's accurate. I mean, what do you think? The fact that Microsoft is pretty much not marketed the whatever it's called, Soul Blade or Hellblade, whatever the fuck that thing is.
Yeah, I'm still. I mean, people made fun of me for saying it, but I wasn't sure why they ever bought that studio. Just because it's not that they can't make a quality game; it's that it's not what they need or needed, and they let it marinate for just a really, really long period of time.
They've barely shown anything, and they're not marketing it. So
yeah, I don't. They bought them for almost $200 million. I think this game probably cost us fair share of cash. They did release that other random game, right? Out of there, I can't remember what it was called, but it was a smaller title. And then, so I don't know. I hope not, but it seems to be that that's on their trajectory. We know from the reporting from The Verge, I think, that they were saying that, they've kind of purged Activision and Bethesda, and now they're going to have to go to the Xbox studios themselves. And so that's where I do wonder what's going to happen with some of those teams.
Well, I mean, think about this. If this game comes out and it's amazing, then Microsoft has failed. And if this game comes out and it's shit, they failed, right? Because if it's amazing, they've not marketed it at all. They've not banged the drum. They've not released gameplay. It's kind of crazy. Machine XP, thank you, buddy. He says people are failing to look at how Xbox, Microsoft are looking at their games. They are handling 3 divisions differently. Bethesda, Activision, Xbox Studio Group. These 3 different things and 3 different purposes. First off, thank you for the generous super chat. I appreciate it. Second off, I understand that every company or every division within a company is different and have different needs and different rewards they offer. But fundamentally, they're still feeding into the ecosystem that is Game Pass, right? I mean, do you agree with what Machine is saying, Colin?
Yeah, I mean, the problem with the whole economic question around this too is just Game Pass has to account for an enormous amount of everything that happens at Xbox runs through the service. And decisions that are made all hinge back to the service. So I don't know. I feel bad. I feel like we're always beating up on Game Pass. I do think it.
You are.
I am.
I love it.
I should say we like sacred or whatever. Yeah. I just feel like the value proposition is very high. It's just not. It's not commensurate to what it's going to cost. And you're just seeing that from the Call of Duty decision. That is just the craziest thing to me.
Do you hear any numbers for I'm stunned about PS Plus. I subscribe to PS Plus, whatever the top tier is, and I don't use it a lot. But whenever I go over there, I'm like, my God, there's so much value in that library. Is that one of the things that is driving the Sony profits, or do you think if Xbox Game Pass goes away or pretty much no longer becomes a threat, that gets neutered, or is it a successful? I even look at the trials they have. The fact that people aren't losing their shit over the fact that you can play 2 to 6 hours of pretty much any game that's over 5 hours or over $60 or $50 or whatever it is, that's fucking awesome. But I just never hear anybody talking about it. Well, do you think it's working for them or no?
I think it is. I think part of the reason you don't hear from that stuff is because people take it for granted, probably rightfully so, because it almost seems like it should be standard. Yeah, okay. You let me demo a game and I'm not going to be necessarily financially invested. And so maybe people are kind of nonplussed by that.
Can you imagine being a kid though, and getting you could get a PlayStation 5 for Christmas and a subscription to the top tier PS Plus. And even though, you'd want to play this, you'd want to play that, you would never be bored.
Yeah, no, I mean, I say over and over again on the show that they can never release another video game ever again. Yeah. And I'd be totally fine. I would still not get to everything I want to play before I died. And so I agree. No, as far as I understand from the financials, PS Plus is a profit driver. The major differentiator is that they don't have to, well, there's multiple differentiators. They've not engineered their audience to expect certain things. So when things pop up like Animal Well, it's good, and it's only in the PS Plus Extra tier, not even in the PlayStation Plus Essential tier. And so I think that people are more engineered towards purchasing games over there. And so I don't think that there's that downside. And then Sony doesn't have to kind of let go of a la carte sales on day and date games from their own PlayStation studios. They know they're going to make a lot of money on those, so they don't have to let that go. So PS Plus becomes a licensing engine. And as long as the licenses don't outweigh lost sales plus what they pay out, then they're in good shape. And I do know that from their financials, they say they want to even make that, they're going to rely on that, on PS Plus to manufacture more profit for them as a unit. And I think that's a really great place to be. I think legacy subscription services are great. I think those make perfect sense because you can do that for relatively cheap, and you can have access to a nice catalog of games, and no one's really losing anything because no one buys games after a few months anyway, unless they go on sale. So, so you're actually very similar to touring for a musician. You're giving almost a second breath to some games, which I think is really important. That would otherwise not exist.
Movies to TV or to cable, right?
And there's actually upside, but I think only in the perspective of legacy. I think the bigger trap is in how the economics work for day and date games and how the economics simply don't work for day and date games. So those are two different conversations. And we know this again from Insomniac's leak, where they put Not Zero Dawn, Forbidden West on the PlayStation Plus and said that they lost like $100 million.
Right. Right.
So,
and didn't they just pull one of them? There was a Horizon that just got pulled from.
They pulled Zero Dawn. I wonder if they're planning on showing that long rumored Zero Dawn re-release.
Probably like you mean the update?
Yeah, and I wonder if they're just
whatever.
Yeah, so I think they just want to give that as much heft as possible without giving people an opportunity to play the original for free.
Got it. Rambling Gamer, thank you, buddy. He says, Colin, why doesn't Game Pass work, but free-to-play does? Free-to-play is all about access and post-monetization. Game Pass is similar with upfront cost and games as the retainer.
Yeah, because they're not spreading the field. I mean, you have a much... I personally think you're more likely to succeed with one good product than a collection of games or products that at different quality levels, production levels, or whatever. One thing is easy to sell.
Compare.
It's not necessarily going to work, but you can wrap your head around selling one thing. So to me, that's why free-to-play games work so well.
When they work,
frankly, they work too well.
Don't.
Yeah, no, right, exactly. 99 out of 100 times they don't work at all. But I don't like the way free-to-play games have affected things in the industry all the way. I always think about Plants vs. Zombies 2 and how you couldn't even buy it. You had to play the free-to-play version of it when it came out. And it's like, what is this? And there's been like an adjustment since then to get to a more equitable place. But, it seems obvious to me that you focus on your whales, your full-time players, the lifestyle players, make a lot of money on them. But you got to, again, time is the currency, as we said.
Weird though, because you were earlier talking about Last Stand, where your most successful tier is the $4.99 tier, and you don't really raise the prices. So you would think that in things like Patreon or YouTube or whatever, that the whale theory would be just as prevalent, but it's actually not. It's more volume based, I think. Don't you? I mean, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, but I also think that like low cost subscriptions like GTA Plus probably do really well too.
Because the cost is minimal.
I think that's a major parameter. I think that I don't know what the tension point is. It's probably like $8 or something like that. And once you get above that cost, you're like, right. You just before that and it's crazy that we've even gotten that high. I mean, that goes to show the devaluation of money. But
yeah, okay.
I think that's a major driver, and that's why we keep costs low. And maybe we'll raise prices one day in the future. I have no idea, but we've survived this long by keeping it this way. But it requires like lots of people to be in. Right. It makes it more important to spread the field. The higher the cost, the less important it is to spread the field.
Right. Understood. Maxwell, thank you, buddy. He says, man, somebody that you guys should invite to the shows to talk about ESG, DEI politics is Patrick Bet David. I
know that guy.
Is Bet his middle name?
I don't know. I think he might be Israeli or something.
Okay, so PBD Podcast and Valuetainment. I don't know him, but what I'll tell you, Colin, is you are exactly correct, and I am stunned that, the two things I'm stunned about the games media. One is that, none of these guys have done investigative reporting on what the fuck is happening at Xbox and their leadership. It's like, why can we hear about all these leaks and shit, but we can't figure out, and I don't mean this like I'm making a joke, like I'm raking Mac Booty over the coals, but why haven't they fired those guys? What is going on? The other one is, you'd think that somebody would do exactly what you were saying, which is, hey, everybody's talking about DEI. Let's break the numbers down. This much money was given to EA. EA had to achieve these 6 things to get on the investment sheet. I have never seen that, and I don't know why that is so hard to report on.
Yeah, I don't think that there doesn't seem to be, and I'm part of the problem because I don't do a lot of legwork these days either, but I did at one time in my career.
Yeah, but nobody comes to you for that. I mean, they come for you for analysis, right? And sort of your thoughts, but no one thinks of you guys at the moment as reporters, like you're breaking
No, I don't.
news.
Well, that's why I agree. I'm not a reporter or a journalist anymore. And I feel like I did my time and I did a lot of that kind of shit. And it is annoying because that's what I'm saying about messaging. Like messaging is like, I'm actually sure a lot of the stuff is true. I just think that you need to show it more compellingly from stem to stern about cause and effect. Otherwise, it's just whatever, I don't really give a shit.
Yeah, and show it not just this is what we got and this is what we did, but I want to see, and these were the games that were affected. And look, the games that had it, 90% of them sold better now than before. So yeah, you're going to get some games where, or not. But yeah, we don't have any evidence. It's just people shouting at the fucking moon. It's annoying. But I'll look into that guy, Maxwell. Thank you, buddy. Vitaphone, the cancer started on college campuses and exploded with the rise of smartphones, social media. Direct correlation on race relation graphs. I mean, social media and smartphones have been a nightmare. I love them, but they're horrible. I agree.
Yeah, totally.
College campuses, I don't know, man. I love college kids who think they're going to change the world because some of them do. I hate how ill-informed they are. I hate how they, as much as I'm a progressive, I think everybody should be able to speak on a college campus if they're invited. I'm assuming that's what he's talking about, right? The whole...
I would assume so too. Yeah. Yeah. It is weird how quickly things change because I graduated from college in 2007 and my campus was pretty radical in some ways, but nothing like what's going on now. It's funny because I'm sympathetic to the protests in some sense, in the very strict sense that I just don't think we should really be involved in this at all.
Yeah.
But I'm sympathetic to Israel too, so it's like they need to do what they need to do, but I just don't think we really need to play a part in all of this, and I think that that's an important differentiator. But I think a lot of the protesters have also lost the plot completely,
if they ever had it. I mean,
and come across as just so ignorant of history and how we got here and making really incoherent arguments. And we made fun of the Queers for Palestine thing. It's like, it's so fucking funny to me. When you and I talked last, I think that came up. It's like, what is going on? Like, what is going on with you people?
It's maybe that's because the college. I don't know what they're teaching them, but anyway, I'm glad I'm going to those colleges. Awesome, Tatum. Thank you, buddy. Jeff and Colin, what's up? The real question: what's for dinner tonight? Taco Tuesday? Ha ha! He says, ha, laughing at your own joke. Love you guys. Tonight, the family's getting together, and we are going to play. This game, Tapple. Yeah. And we're probably going to order pizza. What do you guys do?
It's a word game?
Yeah, but what it is, it's kind of cool. It's there's a lot of games like it where you'll draw a card, it'll say, okay, pizza toppings, right? So if it's your turn, you've got to pick a pizza topping that starts with the letter.
Oh, cool.
The differentiator though is you've got this gimmick wheel, and if you say mozzarella, you push the M down, and so no one else can use the M.
Oh, cool.
So it's kind of a tension of like you want to get the letters as soon as possible that and then you're kind of fucked if the time runs out. So
nice, I like that. Yeah, I love word games.
Yeah, well, when we do the ayahuasca or DMT in August,
we'll play that and do acid.
Bukaki, if you're watching, baby, I need some DMT. What are you doing for dinner tonight, Colin?
I don't know. Micah cooks every night, so she'll have something awesome.
She looks like she makes good fries. She posted some crinkly fries the other day.
Oh yeah, dude. She makes good crinkle fries.
Oh.
She's a really, really wonderful cook. I'm very, very lucky. And she grilled some steaks last night, and she wears the pants in this relationship out at the grill. So yeah, I don't know what she's planning for tonight, but I'm looking forward to that. I'm just gonna take a shot. I'm sorry.
Smoke a joint and have dinner.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a shower and smoke a joint and I showered already today, so I'm a little thrown off, but I'm not going to work out today. I'm going to take today off, so take another shower just for fun.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
Darren, thank you, buddy. He says, just got here. Thoughts on Square going multi-platform. I think you have to survive. And if you're going to stay a public company, that's a good way to do it. Another good way to do it is to, I think they spend too much money on their games, given their games are niche as they are. I know they're not niche, but they're niche now. Back in Final Fantasy VII days, they weren't. And back in Japan, when RPGs ruled the roost, they weren't. But I don't know, even if they are on every platform in the world, they're still racing towards the cliff of not being sustainable. I think they're great at certain things. If it were up to me and I didn't have to answer to much stockholders, and I understand that's a big if, I would be making just remasters, and I would be making brand new games like, what was that game that came out last year that was like an ode to Secret of Mana? Sacred Soul, not Sacred Souls, that's your show. Something SS is what it was.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But I would do that.
Oh, Sea of Stars.
Sea of Stars. Yeah, there you go. I just make those and make them look really good, but I'm there for their stories and their combat systems. I'm not there for Sony production values, but I may be in the minority. What do you think, Colin? You happy they're going multi-platform?
Yeah, I kind of always saw them as multi-platform. I just always thought that their strategy, they are multi-platform. Their strategy, though, is to literally be multi-platform. Like, they'll do exclusives here and exclusives here and exclusives here. And I always thought that was kind of weird. My audience knows that I've long made the case that, and I've spelled it out because I have the printed somewhere as like their release schedule over like 3 years, and how weird their release schedule was, where they would just release like 7 games in 4 weeks and shit like that. And I'm like, I just don't know what you're doing. Like, why? What are you doing? I just don't think they ever really gave themselves a chance. I also think that Square Enix never seems to be happy with the way the games sell. And I don't know why it always comes out like that. I don't know if it's something lost in translation, but I cannot remember the last time they said they were happy with a game. like a game of consequence. They were happy with like Pixel Remaster and stuff like that. But it's like, how can all of your AAA games fail to meet expectations?
I don't know what the expectations.
Well, yeah, it's like, what were your expectations for Rebirth? I made the argument, not to like come to Square's defense, but people talking about Rebirth's sales on Sacred Symbols, I was talking about like, okay, so 38% of people beat Remake, and the install base when Remake came out was like almost 100 million PS4s. Rebirth comes out with 38% of the people having beaten the original game on a console install base half as large. What the fuck did you think was going to happen with Final Fantasy VII? Did you think it was going to sell more copies? Like, that doesn't even make any sense. It's not a game like Mass Effect 2 or something where it was like, it became this phenomenon and it gave you a way to avoid even playing the first game. And it's a
continuation. It's not like jumping on to, but the question then is, do you think they're going to, it sounds like they're full steam ahead with the third one, but you'd think they'd go, wait a minute.
I think they have to keep going at this point. And I'm sure Sony money plays a part in this and stuff. Like, I think it's going to be awesome when more people get to experience 16 and the 7 games, because they're really awesome.
Right.
I just think people are misreading this a little bit. I'll be very interested to see where these games end up, but I think a lot of this is about Nintendo Switch 2. And I would imagine a world where Final Fantasy VII Trilogy came to Switch 2 long before I imagined it come to Xbox. What could come to both. But I think the funny thing, and we said this earlier, was that the console with the most Switch, or the most Square exclusives, is Switch, and from Square Enix. And it's like, well, that's awesome for me. If you're going to break those games out and put them on PlayStation, sick. Triangle Strategy and all that kind of stuff, cool, man. Bring that shit over. Although I think Nintendo might have published that. Yeah.
Triangle Strategy?
Yeah. I think that maybe Nintendo. It seems like something Nintendo would have published. But yeah. Go on.
Risk It. Did you ever play that Nintendo game they did on the 3DS where you were Abe Lincoln and his robot and Paul Bunyan, and what the fuck was that thing called? It was a first-party Nintendo turn-based first-person or third-person strategy game with like airships and shit. It was so fucking weird, man, but it was really good. But I don't.
Maybe someone in the chat will know if.
What the fuck was that thing called? Risk It for the Biscuit. Thank you, buddy. Being left or right these days means being an extremist. I'm a centrist. Best idea should win. DEI is an important conversation. Colin should have more. There you go. All right. I'm sure he'll take it under advisement. Thank you for the super chat, buddy. Good thing. I appreciate being here. Rodent 800, new member. Thank you for the support. I appreciate it, man. Hopefully you'll be on lunch with Jaffe tomorrow. My point, says Machine XP. Thank you, bud. With Game Pass and the different gaming groups, they own as each have their own values, numbers and players, individual subs, etc. Okay, etc. Okay, I hear you, but I think ultimately it all feeds into the big machine. But I understand and I very much appreciate that. And then finally, the last one, Sabbath says, if Game Pass had less games but cheaper, it would be more viable. Depends on the games, man. It's always about how good the content is. But I hear you.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's not even really a very good idea. But you think about things that's like, would there be an interesting approach with subscriptions to have like a game of the month club, where it's like we have a big like.
Well, Sony used to do that, right? Sony. PS
right. I guess what I'm saying is like more of like a we're all gonna focus on this game this month.
Right.
This is the new game. Like this is the one. It's like Oprah's book club back in the day and shit.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that would be a much lower risk, lower ceiling.
I think you would have to create an infrastructure around it, right? Like I love that idea, by the way. There's just not a lot of games that merit it, but like Indica just came out, and the last kind of game club I did was with Cliff Bleszinski and Gears of War 1 about a year ago. And I knew I'd have Cliff there so we could really dive deep into the lore and the metaphor and all that shit. But now, since then, there's not like a lot of games that have that. I know you're not talking literally like a book club, but I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, just like something. It would
when
kind
Ken's
of.
game comes out, I would love to have for 4 weeks the month it comes out, he's gonna be online like a chat like this, and he's gonna talk about the inspirations, and he's gonna answer questions, and I think shit like that would be cool. But that's for a very specific group, I think.
Yeah, I think there's something about curation that I think is the nut to be cracked.
Yeah.
Like how to drive people towards games they want to play at reasonable prices where you don't stun them with a $70 cost or a subscription buy-in or whatever the case might be. Like and AI might play a huge role in this too, about driving people towards the right kinds of games and the right kinds of products. But it all comes back to this idea that there are just way too many games and way too many products, and people are going to find out the easy way or the hard way. The
hard way we're finding out now, right?
Yeah, that's why I said on the show, I'm not so sure Sony's done with their layoffs. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I have no clue. But we're nowhere near the end of this in terms of the industry. Like,
no.
Just because it's not about the health of the industry, though. That's like what people are kind of losing sight of. It's about that there can only be so many winners because time is the greatest currency right now. And so if you're entering that arena, you need to have something that can demand people's time. It's not even the money. It's the fucking time. Like, no one's going to pay attention to you if they're obsessed with Fortnite. They don't give a shit, And so, like, why even bother?
To encourage somebody to go in the business right now and not at an auteur level, I think is stupid. Yes, it was codenamed Steam is what the game was called. Thank you, Awesome. I appreciate it. Finally, JSD, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships, buddy. It's very supportive and very kind, and I appreciate it, man. Thank you, bud. William Alonzo wants you to know, Jaffe, you are a have-been in year winder. I don't know what that means. I think that's it, Colin. Let me ask you just one final question.
Sure.
Who are the most obnoxious people online? Oh, he says it's about sucking cock. I don't... What... Why are we in a world? It is 2024. Let me tell you something, bitch. If I sucked cock, I would enjoy the shit out of sucking cock. There was a Ricky Gervais episode of Extras where there was this gay guy called Bunny. And he came out of the closet. He says, now I'm free to enjoy all the cock I want. He's like, yum, yum. It was awesome. But I would be totally... out there's the gayest guy because I got a lot of dudes coming on to me way more than women, but as such, what's wrong with being gay? What's wrong with the cock in your mouth, sir?
I don't
it's not my cup of tea. It's not my cup of cock, but enjoy that shit. Enjoy that shit, baby.
Teach their own.
Yeah. Colin, anything to wrap it up?
No, man, it was good to speak with you today. Thank you for having me. It was good to talk to you.
Always great.
Yeah, love talking to you, and thank you all there for the audience. Really wonderful people listening, I'm sure, and I appreciate their time today too. So thank you.
Thank you guys. And I'm going to wrap it up with them, but Colin, I'll let you go. Thank you, bud. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to talking to you again. All right, man. Colin off into the night. Bye. Big Afro Man. Thank you, buddy. He says, are aliens real? Yes. Is God an alien? If God exists at all, he is probably an alien. Yes. Awesome says the quote of the day. What's wrong with the cock in your mouth? I mean, seriously, I don't give a shit, you know? I don't know why that's like an insult to people. What do you care if somebody's gay? You know. Anyway, point being, anything else you guys want to talk about, or I'll let you go. I may be streaming Crypt Master in a little bit. Not sure. Depends what kind of energy I have. These things are so much fun, but they wear me out. So, but I hope you guys had a good time. I very much appreciate the support. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the conversations and the super chats and the call-ins. I will be back tomorrow with a more proper Gabbin' and Games episode. I may be having the creator and the head of the studio that made PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale on this week or next week, so stay tuned for that. And again, don't forget, tomorrow is Lunch with Jaffe at 11:30. Members of any tier meet over in the Discord, and it's like an hour and a half. We just hang out, watch videos, eat lunch, play games. It's literally just chill. So be well, you guys. Be safe out there in the big bad world, and I'll see you soon. All right. Bye, you guys.